What happens when one wrong text message changes everything? Lena Carter's life was already falling apart. Broken heart, empty bank account, barely surviving in Brooklyn. But nothing could have prepared her for the night she sent that photo to the wrong person. Not her best friend Sarah, not some random stranger, but Adrian Vale. A man whose name alone makes people nervous, whose world operates in shadows she doesn't understand. One impulsive click, one catastrophic mistake, and suddenly she's pulled into a darkness she never knew existed. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The apartment was too quiet. Lena sat on her bathroom floor, phone clutched in both hands, mascara streaking down her cheeks in uneven lines. The tile felt cold against her bare legs, and somewhere in the kitchen, her roommate's cat was knocking something off the counter. She didn't care. Couldn't care. Everything in her body felt hollow, scooped out and left to echo. 3 years. 3 years with Marcus, and he'd ended it over text. Not even a call. Just 16 words that had appeared on her screen 2 hours ago while she was refilling coffee at the diner. I think we need different things. This isn't working anymore. Take care. Take care. Like she was some casual acquaintance, like they hadn't talked about getting a place together, like she hadn't spent last Christmas with his family, like she hadn't rearranged her entire life around his schedule. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, probably. Her best friend had been texting every 10 minutes since Lena had sent her the initial breakdown message, but Lena hadn't been ready to talk. Hadn't been ready to hear the inevitable "you're better off without him" speech that she knew was coming, even if it was true. She opened her photos instead. Stupid. She knew it was stupid even as she did it, scrolling through 3 years of memories. Marcus at Coney Island, arm around her waist. Marcus on her fire escape, drinking cheap beer and laughing at something she'd said. Marcus asleep in her bed, peaceful, like he belonged there. Her chest tightened. The bathroom walls felt closer than they had a minute ago. The wine bottle sat next to the sink, half empty, bought yesterday for a dinner that would never happen. She reached for it, took a drink straight from the bottle. It tasted sour, acidic. Perfect. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a disaster. Red eyes, smudged makeup, hair tangled from running her hands through it too many times. She looked exactly how she felt. Wrecked, used up, disposable. You're better than this, she thought. You're better than crying over some guy who couldn't even break up with you face to face. But thinking it and believing it were different things. Her phone buzzed again. Definitely Sarah this time. Her friend had probably already lined up a plan. Ice cream, bad movies, maybe dragging Lena out to some bar in Williamsburg where they could trash talk Marcus until Lena felt human again. She should answer. She should let Sarah help. That's what friends did. Instead, Lena opened her camera. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated. She was just so tired of feeling small, a feeling like she'd wasted 3 years on someone who'd never really seen her, a feeling invisible. The wine made everything softer around the edges, made the idea forming in her head seem less insane than it was. She stood up, adjusted her tank top, ran her fingers through her hair. The lighting in the bathroom was terrible, harsh fluorescent that made everyone look half dead. But she didn't care about perfect. She cared about feeling something other than this crushing weight in her chest. The photo took 3 tries. The first one looked too desperate. The second, she'd blinked. The third was different. She looked directly at the camera, eyes still red but defiant now. Vulnerable, but not broken. The tank top had slipped off one shoulder, and her hair fell messily across her face. She looked at it for a long moment. It was bold, risky, exactly the kind of thing she never did. Screw it, she thought. Screw Marcus and his coward's breakup text. Screw playing it safe. She opened her messages, found Sarah's name, and attached the photo. Her finger hovered over the send button. This was stupid. Sending a photo like this, even to her best friend, felt too raw, too exposed. But maybe that's what she needed, to stop hiding, stop playing small, stop being the girl who waited around for someone else to decide she was worth staying for. She pressed send before she could change her mind. The message went through immediately, the little check mark appearing beside it. Done. No taking it back now. Lena set the phone down, took another drink of wine, and waited for Sarah's response. Her friend would probably call immediately, demanding to know if Lena had completely lost her mind, and honestly, that reaction would be fair. She had kind of lost her mind, but at least she was feeling something now, even if it was just the sharp edge of adrenaline. 30 seconds passed. A minute. No response. That was weird. Sarah usually texted back within seconds, especially when Lena was going through something. Maybe she was on the subway. Or maybe her phone buzzed. But it wasn't Sarah's name on the screen. It was a number she didn't recognize. Manhattan area code. The message was short, just 3 words. Interesting choice, Lena. Her stomach dropped. The wine bottle slipped from her hand, clattering against the tile, but somehow not breaking. She stared at the screen, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. No. No, 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 no. She opened her sent messages with shaking hands, scrolling to the last thing she'd sent. And there it was, the photo she'd just taken, the one that was supposed to go to Sarah. But it hadn't gone to Sarah. The name above the message thread made her blood go cold. Adrian Vale. She didn't know who Adrian Vale was. Couldn't remember ever having his number. Couldn't remember how it would have gotten into her phone. But there it was, sitting in her contacts like it had always been there. And she just sent him, this complete stranger, a photo that was meant for her best friend's eyes only. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She tried to unsend it, but the option wasn't there. Tried to delete the conversation, but that wouldn't delete it from his phone. Tried to breathe, but her lungs weren't cooperating. Another message appeared. Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. She just sent an extremely personal photo to someone she'd never met, and he was telling her not to panic? Her fingers flew across the screen. Who is this? How did you get my number? The response came immediately. You have mine. Seems fair I'd have yours. Though I wasn't expecting this particular introduction. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She was having some kind of wine-induced nightmare, and any second now she'd wake up and none of this would be real. Her phone rang. The same Manhattan number. Adrian Vale was calling her. She stared at the screen, watching it ring once, twice, 3 times. Every instinct screamed at her to ignore it, to throw her phone out the window, to pretend this entire night had never happened. But ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. Wouldn't undo what she'd done. On the 4th ring, she answered. Hello? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended, barely more than a whisper. Lena Carter. His voice was smooth, controlled, with an edge of something she couldn't quite identify. Amusement, maybe, or curiosity. I have to say, I've received a lot of unexpected messages in my life, but this one might take first place. She couldn't form words, couldn't think. I'm so sorry. That wasn't meant for you. I don't even know how I have your number. I swear I've never... Breathe, he said, and there was something almost gentle in the command. You're working yourself into a panic attack, and that's not necessary. Not necessary? Her voice pitched higher. I just sent a complete stranger. I'm not a stranger. Something in his tone changed. We haven't met, but we're not strangers. Your roommate, Jessica, she works for one of my properties. She added my number to your phone last month when you were helping her with something. Emergency contact, I believe she said. Jessica. Her roommate, Jessica, who managed some upscale building in Manhattan and was always vaguely mysterious about who owned it. Lena had helped her set up a new phone a few weeks ago, had let Jessica use her phone to transfer some contacts. I didn't know, Lena said. I swear I didn't. I thought I was sending it to my friend Sarah, and I just... Her voice cracked. Please delete it. Please, I'm begging you, just delete the photo and we can pretend this never happened. Silence on the other end. It stretched out for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. I could do that, Adrian finally said, but I'm not going to. Her heart stopped. What? Because I think we should meet. Absolutely not. The words came out automatically, fueled by panic and the last shreds of self-preservation she had left. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but that doesn't mean tomorrow, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. There's a restaurant in Tribeca, Maria, 7 p.m. I'll have a table reserved. I'm not meeting some random man just because I accidentally... I'm not random, Lena, and I'm not asking. His voice remained calm, almost conversational, but there was steel underneath it. You sent me something intimate, whether you meant to or not. That creates a situation. I'm giving you a chance to resolve it face to face, like adults. You can accept that chance, or you can spend the next however long wondering when the other shoe is going to drop. Her throat went dry. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you dinner. A pause. But I understand how the uncertainty might feel threatening, so let me be clear. I have no intention of sharing your photo with anyone. I have no intention of using it against you. What I do intend is to have a conversation with the woman brave enough or reckless enough to send something like that, even if it was an accident. I can't afford... She stopped herself, embarrassed. But it was true. She couldn't afford some fancy Tribeca restaurant, could barely afford her half of the rent on the apartment she shared with Jessica. You're not paying, Adrian said. Consider it compensation for your panic attack. 7 p.m. tomorrow, Lena. Don't make me come find you. The line went dead. Lena sat on the bathroom floor, phone pressed to her ear even though he was gone, and tried to remember how to breathe. This wasn't real, couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, struggling waitresses from Brooklyn who could barely keep their lives together on a good day. But her phone's call log didn't lie. 14 minutes on a call with Adrian Vale. And before that, the photo that had started this whole nightmare. She looked at herself in the mirror again, same red eyes, same smudged makeup. But something had changed in the last 20 minutes. Some invisible line had been crossed, and she had no idea how to get back to the other side of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Girl, where are you? You okay? Been trying to call. Lena stared at the message. How was she supposed to explain this? How was she supposed to tell her best friend that she'd somehow managed to turn a breakup cry into whatever this situation was? She texted back. Long story. Call you tomorrow? Sarah's response was immediate. You better. Love you. Love you too. Lena set the phone down and stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. The wine bottle still sat on the floor, and she considered finishing it. Considered drinking until none of this felt real anymore. Instead, she turned on the shower and stepped under the water, still fully clothed. The tank top that had seemed so defiant in the photo now just felt stupid, and she wanted to wash this entire night off her skin. Tomorrow. She had until tomorrow to figure out what she was going to do. The smart choice was obvious. Ignore Adrian Vale's invitation, block his number, and hope the whole thing just faded away. She could tell Jessica what happened, make her roommate promise to keep Vale away from her. It was a mistake, nothing more, and she didn't owe some stranger a dinner just because of a misdirected text. But even as she thought it, she knew she wouldn't do that. Because he was right about one thing. The uncertainty would eat her alive. Not knowing when or how this might come back to haunt her, always looking over her shoulder, always wondering if today was the day her stupid mistake caught up with her. And there was something else. Something she barely wanted to admit even to herself. She was curious. Who was Adrian Vale? What kind of man received a photo like that from a stranger and responded by demanding dinner instead of just deleting it? What kind of man had the kind of voice that could sound threatening and reassuring at the same time? The water ran cold, and she finally peeled off the wet tank top, letting it fall to the shower floor. She stood there, shivering, trying to piece together how her life had gone from depressingly normal to completely surreal in the span of one evening. Marcus had broken up with her. That's what had started this. Marcus, who was probably already asleep in his apartment in Queens, who had no idea that his coward's text message had set off a chain reaction that led here, to this moment, to Lena standing in a cold shower trying to decide if she was brave enough or stupid enough to walk into whatever trap she'd accidentally set for herself. She thought about the photo again, the defiance in her eyes, the way she'd looked directly at the camera like she was daring the world to tell her she wasn't enough. That girl in the photo wouldn't hide, wouldn't run from this. Maybe that girl was who Lena needed to be now. The next morning came too fast. Lena woke up with a headache that felt like karma and a phone full of missed calls from Sarah. She texted her friend back with a vague excuse about being exhausted and promised to call later, then spent 20 minutes staring at her closet like it held the secrets of the universe. What did you wear to a dinner that was technically an ambush? Something that said, I'm taking this seriously, but also, I'm not trying to impress you? Something that didn't look like she'd tried too hard, but also didn't look like she'd given up? She settled on a simple black dress, the one she wore to job interviews and the occasional wedding. Professional enough to feel like armor, plain enough to not send any messages she didn't intend. Work was a blur. The diner where she waitressed was always chaos on Saturdays. Tourists and hungover NYU students filling every booth, and normally she thrived in the controlled disorder of it. But today she kept messing up orders, pouring coffee into water glasses, forgetting to smile at customers who definitely noticed. "You okay, Lena?" Miguel, the cook, asked during her break. "You seem off." "Just tired," she lied. "Didn't sleep well." "Man problems?" She almost laughed. If only it were that simple, something like that. By 6 p.m., she was standing outside her apartment building, trying to convince herself that getting on the subway to Tribeca was a reasonable decision and not the worst idea she'd ever had. Jessica had already left for her shift, which was probably for the best. Lena didn't want to explain where she was going or why. The train was packed with weekend commuters, and Lena spent the entire ride alternating between checking the time and checking her reflection in the dark window. She looked tired, scared, exactly like someone who'd spent the last 24 hours in a state of low-grade panic. Mara turned out to be exactly the kind of restaurant Lena had imagined, all soft lighting and expensive-looking table settings. The kind of place where the menu didn't list prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The host looked at her like he was mentally calculating whether she belonged there. But when she gave Adrian's name, his expression shifted to something resembling respect. "Of course. Right this way, Miss Carter." He led her through the dining room to a private corner booth, and there, sitting with a glass of red wine and a calm expression that suggested he'd never been anxious about anything in his life, was Adrian Vale. Lena's first thought was that he looked younger than he'd sounded on the phone, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to track her every movement as she approached. He wore a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, and when he stood to greet her, she realized he was tall, not absurdly so, but enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly to meet his gaze. "Lena," he gestured to the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming." "Like I had a choice," she said, sitting down before her knees could give out a slight smile. "You always have a choice. You chose to be here." The waiter appeared before she could respond, asking about drinks. She ordered water, then immediately regretted it because it made her look as nervous as she felt. Adrian ordered her a glass of wine anyway. "The Pinot Noir, she'll like that." And the waiter disappeared before she could protest. "Presumptuous," she said. "I've been called worse." He leaned back, studying her with an expression that made her want to squirm. "You look terrified." "I'm having dinner with a stranger who has a compromising photo of me. Terrified seems appropriate." "Had," he corrected. "Past tense." She blinked. "What?" "I deleted it this morning, around 10 a.m., if you want the exact time." He pulled out his phone, opened his photos, and turned the screen toward her. Empty. "See for yourself." Relief flooded through her so fast she felt dizzy. "Why didn't you tell me that yesterday? Why make me come here if—" "Because deleting the photo doesn't delete the situation." He set the phone down. "You still sent it. I still received it. That creates a connection, whether we want it or not. And I'm curious about you, Lena Carter. Curious about what would make someone send a photo like that to the wrong person. It was an accident, I know. But accidents reveal things. And yours revealed someone who's either very brave or very broken. I haven't decided which yet." The wine arrived, and Lena took a long drink, not caring that she probably looked desperate. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're a waitress at the Starlight Diner in Brooklyn. I know you split a 1-bedroom apartment with Jessica Monroe and pay $750 a month in rent, which you're usually late on. I know you went to community college for 2 semesters before dropping out. And I know your boyfriend of 3 years broke up with you via text yesterday afternoon, which is probably what led to the photo in the first place." The wine turned sour in her mouth. "How do you—" "Jessica talks, and I listen." He paused. "I also run background checks on anyone I'm meeting for the first time. Basic precaution." That's... She couldn't find the word. Invasive, creepy, terrifying. Not normal. I'm not a normal person, Lena, and normal people don't usually end up in my life." He leaned forward slightly. "But you're here now, so let's talk." "About what?" "About what you want." She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "What I want? I want to rewind 24 hours and not send that photo. I want my boyfriend to not be a coward. I want to not be sitting in a restaurant I can't afford with a man who apparently runs background checks for fun. You want to not feel powerless, Adrian said quietly. You want to stop feeling like the world is happening to you instead of with you. You want to matter. The accuracy of it hit her like a fist to the chest. She set down the wine glass before she could drop it. Stop it. Stop what? Telling the truth? Stop acting like you know me. You don't. You know facts about me, data points, but that's not the same thing as knowing me. You're right, he said. So tell me something real, something that's not in a background check. She should leave. Should stand up, walk out, block his number, and pretend this whole nightmare had never happened. But instead she heard herself say, I'm tired. I'm 26 years old and I'm so tired of trying to hold everything together when it keeps falling apart anyway. I work 60-hour weeks at a job I hate. I live in an apartment that's falling apart, and I just wasted 3 years on someone who couldn't even respect me enough to break up with me face to face. And last night, for just a minute, I wanted to feel like I was worth something, like I was more than just the girl who serves coffee and gets left behind. She stopped, horrified at herself. Why am I telling you this? Because I asked, Adrian said simply, and because you need to tell someone. The waiter returned to take their order, and Adrian requested for both of them, some pasta dish Lena couldn't pronounce. She should have objected, should have asserted some kind of control over the situation, but she was too wrung out to care. When the waiter left, Adrian said, I have a proposition for you. No. You haven't heard it yet. I don't care. The answer is no. She started to stand. Thank you for deleting the photo. I'm going to leave now, and we're going to forget this ever happened. I need a photographer. She stopped. What? I need someone to document some events I'm hosting over the next few weeks. Someone with a good eye. Someone who can capture moments without being obtrusive. He gestured to her. Jessica mentioned you used to take photos, that you were good at it. I haven't touched a camera in 3 years. That's not a no. It should have been. Should have been an immediate, emphatic, absolute no. But instead, she heard herself ask, why me? Because you see things, Adrian said. That photo you sent, accidental or not, it was good, raw, honest, unpolished in all the right ways. You weren't trying to be perfect. You were trying to be real. That's rare. You can't possibly be offering me a job based on one accidental photo. I'm offering you a job based on instinct, mine, not yours. He pulled a card from his pocket, set it on the table between them. Think about it. The job pays $5,000 for 3 events. Cash. You'd have access to equipment if you need it, and you'd be working directly for me. $5,000. That was more than she made in 2 months at the diner. That was rent for months. That was breathing room. That was the difference between barely surviving and actually living. What's the catch? She asked. No catch. You show up, you take photos, you get paid. Simple. Nothing simple. Especially not when it involves mysterious men who run background checks. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd sat down. You're right to be suspicious, but I'm not offering because I want something from you, Lena. I'm offering because I think you need this, and because I'm curious to see what you'll do with an opportunity. The food arrived, and they ate in a silence that felt less hostile than it had at the beginning. The pasta was incredible, better than anything Lena had tasted in months, and she had to force herself not to eat too fast, not to show how hungry she actually was. The first event is next Saturday, Adrian said, setting down his fork. Gallery opening in Chelsea. Nothing too complicated, just candid shots of guests, art, the general atmosphere. If you're interested, meet me there at 8 p.m. If not, don't show up and we'll never speak again. Just like that? Just like that. She looked at the card on the table. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name, Adrian Vale, and a phone number. No company, no title, no explanation of who he was or what he did. Who are you? She asked. Really? Someone who recognizes potential when he sees it. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. The meal's paid for. Stay, finish your wine, order dessert if you want. No pressure, Lena. Just a choice. He left before she could respond, walking out of the restaurant like he owned it, which, for all she knew, he probably did. Lena sat alone in the booth, staring at the business card and trying to understand what had just happened. This was insane. All of it. The photo, the dinner, the job offer. She should crumple up the card, throw it away, go back to her normal life, and forget Adrian Vale existed. But as she picked up the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters, she couldn't shake the feeling that normal was the last thing she wanted to be. She didn't tell Sarah about the dinner, didn't tell Jessica about the job offer. Spent the week in a fog of indecision, the business card burning a hole in her wallet every time she opened it. $5,000, 3 events, one choice that could either be the smartest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. By Friday, she'd almost convinced herself not to go. It was too risky, too unknown, too much like something that would end badly. Adrian Vale was clearly someone with power and resources, and people like that didn't offer money to struggling waitresses without an agenda. But Saturday evening found her standing outside a Chelsea gallery, camera in hand. An old Canon she'd bought used years ago and hadn't touched since Marcus told her photography was a nice hobby but not a real career plan. The gallery glowed with warm light, well-dressed people visible through the windows, and somewhere inside was Adrian Vale, probably expecting her not to show. She could still leave, could turn around, go home, return to the safe predictability of her life. Instead, she walked through the door. The gallery was smaller than she'd expected, but elegant. Walls lined with abstract paintings that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Guests clustered in small groups, champagne flutes in hand, voices creating a low hum of sophisticated conversation. And there, near the back, talking to an older woman in a striking red dress, was Adrian. He saw her immediately. Across the room, through the crowd, his eyes found hers, and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, he'd known she'd come, but something else. Satisfaction, maybe. Or recognition. He excused himself from the conversation and crossed the room to her, moving with the kind of easy confidence that suggested he'd never been uncertain about anything. "You came," he said. "Don't sound so smug about it." "I'm not smug. I'm pleased." He gestured to the camera. "You brought your own equipment. Didn't want to owe you anything else." "Smart." He turned, surveying the room. "No restrictions. Shoot whatever catches your eye. I want to see how you see this world." "Oh, that's it?" "That's the whole assignment. That's it." He started to walk away, then paused. "Lena, don't try to make it perfect. Perfect is boring. Just make it real." He disappeared into the crowd, leaving her standing alone with her camera and a choice to make: hide behind the lens and play it safe, or take the kind of risks that had gotten her into this situation in the first place. She raised the camera, found her first shot, a woman laughing at something her companion had said, head thrown back, completely unguarded, and pressed the shutter. The flash illuminated something she hadn't noticed before. Adrian, across the room, watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken. This was a mistake. Had to be a mistake. But as she kept shooting, capturing moments of unguarded humanity in a room full of careful pretense, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, it was the first right choice she'd made in a long time. The gallery event lasted 3 hours, and Lena shot nearly 400 photos. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, capturing moments people didn't know they were giving away. A hand lingering too long on someone's arm, a fake smile that didn't reach the eyes, the exhaustion behind a socialite's carefully maintained facade. By the time the last guest trickled out around 11, her feet ached and her shoulders were tight from holding the camera, but she felt more alive than she had in months. Adrian appeared at her elbow as she was reviewing shots on the camera's small screen. "How'd it go?" "Good, I think." She turned the camera toward him, showing him a shot of 2 men in expensive suits having what looked like an intense conversation near one of the abstract paintings. "Got some interesting moments." He studied the image for a long moment, then looked at her with something that might have been approval. "Send me everything you shot, all of it, edited or not. I want to see your full perspective." "When do you need them by?" "Monday's fine." He paused. "There's a car waiting outside. I'll have my driver take you home." "I can take the subway." "At midnight? From Chelsea?" He shook his head. "The car's already paid for. Don't argue." She wanted to argue anyway, wanted to assert some kind of independence, but the thought of the long subway ride back to Brooklyn at this hour made the offer too tempting to refuse. "Fine. Thank you." The driver was a quiet man in his 50s who didn't ask questions, just drove her back to her apartment building in a black sedan that was probably worth more than everything she owned combined. When they pulled up to her building, a run-down walk-up that looked even more depressing next to the car, the driver handed her an envelope. "Mr. Vale asked me to give you this." Inside was $2,500 in cash and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. "Half now, half when I see the photos." "You did well tonight." AV. Lena sat in her apartment for an hour after she got home, staring at the money spread across her kitchen table. $2,500. She could pay Jessica back the rent she owed, could finally fix her phone's cracked screen, could buy groceries without checking her bank account first. It was more money than she'd ever had at once, and she'd earned it doing something she actually enjoyed. The catch had to be coming. Men like Adrian Vale didn't hand out money to strangers without expecting something in return. But as she carefully tucked the bills into her wallet, she couldn't identify what that something might be. Sunday disappeared into editing photos, and by Monday morning she had a curated set of 75 images that told the story of the gallery opening better than any article could. She sent them to Adrian's email address, the one on the business card, with a brief message. "Here's what I saw. Let me know if you need anything else." His response came within an hour. "Perfect." Second event is Friday. Different venue, same deal. Details to follow. That became the pattern. Friday arrived and she found herself at a private dinner party in a midtown penthouse, camera in hand, capturing moments of Manhattan's elite at play. The following week it was a charity auction in Soho, then a corporate event in the financial district. Each time, Adrian would appear briefly to give her minimal direction. Shoot what feels important, or focus on the interactions, not the setting. And each time she'd collect her payment in cash the same night. By the end of the third week, she had $7,000 saved and a growing sense that she was in over her head. The fourth event was different. Adrian called her directly instead of sending the usual text with details, and his voice had an edge she hadn't heard before. "Friday night, my place. Small gathering, maybe 20 people. Bring the camera, but this one's more personal." "Your place?" Lena shifted the phone to her other ear, balancing it while she poured coffee at the diner. "Why is this one different?" "Because I want you to meet some people. See how you handle a more intimate setting." A pause. "And because I think you're ready for it." "Ready for what?" "We'll discuss it Friday, 8 p.m. I'll send you the address." He hung up before she could ask more questions, leaving Lena standing in the middle of the diner's kitchen with a coffee pot in one hand and a phone in the other, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The address he sent turned out to be a brownstone in the West Village, the kind of place that probably cost $10 million and made no apologies for it. Lena stood outside for a full 2 minutes, camera bag over her shoulder, trying to convince herself to ring the doorbell. A woman in her early 40s answered, blonde, elegant, with the kind of effortless style that came from having money for so long, you forgot it was a privilege. "You must be Lena." "I'm Diana. Come in. Adrian's expecting you." The interior was exactly what Lena had imagined. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, art on the walls that was probably worth more than her life. But it felt lived in, not like a showroom. Books stacked on side tables, a jacket thrown over a chair, signs that someone actually used this space. Diana led her through to a back room that opened onto a garden, impossible in Manhattan, but somehow real, where maybe 15 people stood in small clusters, drinks in hand, conversation flowing easily. Adrian stood near the back, talking to a silver-haired man who looked vaguely familiar, and when he saw Lena, he excused himself immediately. "You came." He looked different here, more relaxed. He'd traded the usual suit for dark jeans and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up. "You keep saying that like you expect me not to show up." "I keep hoping you'll surprise me." He gestured to the garden. Same as before, shoot what catches your eye. But Lena, he waited until she met his gaze. "These people are my world, the real one, not the public face. I'm trusting you with that. Don't make me regret it." The weight of that statement settled between them, heavier than any of the previous assignments. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was Adrian letting her into something private, something that mattered, and they both knew it. She spent the first hour staying invisible, capturing moments without drawing attention. But this crowd was different from the gallery openings and charity events. These people knew each other, really knew each other, and their interactions had depth. She caught Adrian laughing at something Diana said, his face completely open in a way she'd never seen. Caught two men in their 60s playing chess in the corner, engaged in what looked like a decades-old rivalry. Caught a woman maybe Lena's age sitting alone on a bench, staring at the garden like she was trying to memorize it. You're good at this. The voice came from behind her, and Lena turned to find the silver-haired man Adrian had been talking to earlier. Up close, she recognized him, James Cordova, the real estate developer. His face had been in the business section of the Times just last week. Thank you, Mr. Cordova. James, please, Adrian says you're new to this world. Is it that obvious? He smiled, not unkindly. You're looking at everything like it's fascinating. The rest of us stopped seeing it years ago. He nodded toward Adrian, who was now deep in conversation with three other men near the back of the garden. He's got good instincts about people. If he brought you here, there's a reason. I'm just the photographer. No one's just anything in Adrian's life. James studied her for a moment. Word of advice, this world he operates in, it's not always gentle, but he is, more than most people realize. Don't mistake his kindness for weakness. Before Lena could ask what that meant, James moved away, rejoining the chess players. She raised her camera again, found Adrian in the viewfinder. He was gesturing emphatically about something, the three men around him listening intently, and there was something in his expression that made her pause. Not the controlled, careful face he showed the world, but something sharper, more dangerous. The party wound down around midnight. People filtered out in pairs and small groups, calling goodbyes, promising to meet up soon. Diana kissed Adrian on the cheek before leaving, whispering something that made him laugh. And then it was just Lena and Adrian in the garden, the city noise muted by the brick walls surrounding them. Stay for a drink? He asked. She should say no. Should collect her payment and leave, maintain whatever professional distance still existed between them. But instead she heard herself say, sure. He poured them both whiskey in the kitchen. Expensive stuff, smooth and smoky. And they sat at the island, the silence comfortable in a way it hadn't been at that first dinner. Can I ask you something? Lena finally said. You can ask. I might not answer. What do you actually do? James Cordova, the city councilwoman I recognized, the woman who runs that tech startup. These aren't random people. You're not just some guy who throws parties. Adrian swirled the whiskey in his glass. I connect people. I find opportunities where others see obstacles. I make things happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need right now. He met her eyes. Does it bother you, not knowing? Yes. No, I don't know. She took a drink, felt the whiskey burn down her throat. A month ago, I was just a waitress who couldn't pay her rent on time. Now I'm sitting in a West Village brownstone drinking whiskey that probably costs more than my weekly paycheck, taking photos for a man I know almost nothing about. Feels like I walked through a door I can't find my way back through. Would you want to? Go back, I mean. The question hung between them. Would she? Would she trade the last month, the money, the work, the feeling of being good at something again, to go back to the safe, predictable misery of her old life? No, she admitted quietly. I wouldn't. Then stop looking for the door. Adrian set down his glass. You're here because you're talented and I need someone with your perspective. That's it. No hidden agenda, no trap waiting to spring, just work. People don't just hand out opportunities like this. Most people don't, I do. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the garden. I was 23 when I figured out that the world operates on invisible currencies. Money, yes, but also trust, access, information. Most people only see one or two of those currencies. I see all of them. And I saw something in you that night at Maria, someone who's been dealing in a currency she doesn't know she has. What currency is that? Honesty. The raw, unfiltered kind that most people spend their whole lives learning to hide. He turned back to her. That photo you sent me, accident or not, it was the most honest thing I'd seen in months. No performance, no angle, just a person being completely real in a moment of vulnerability. That's rare, valuable. Lena's throat felt tight. So you're collecting me, like some kind of interesting specimen? I'm offering you a chance to be more than what the world told you you're supposed to be. There's a difference. He moved back to the island, refilled both their glasses. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Brave or stupid? Sometimes they're the same thing. They drank in silence for a while, and Lena tried to organize her thoughts into something coherent. This felt like a turning point, like whatever she said next would determine which path her life took from here. "What happened to the last person who had this job?" she finally asked. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "There wasn't a last person. This position didn't exist before you." "Then why create it now?" "Because I needed someone who could see my world clearly, document it without judgment, capture it without trying to change it." He leaned forward slightly. "And because I wanted to see what you'd do with an opportunity, whether you'd rise to it or retreat from it. This feels like a test. Everything's a test, Lena. Every moment, every choice. The difference is whether you know you're being tested." Her phone buzzed in her pocket, probably Jessica wondering where she was, but she ignored it. "The money you've been paying me, it's more than photography is worth. It's exactly what your photography is worth to me. Don't undervalue yourself just because other people have." "I don't know how to do this," she said, the admission coming out smaller than she'd intended. "How to be in this world you're showing me. I don't know the rules, don't speak the language. I'm going to mess it up." "Good. The people who know all the rules are boring. They're predictable. You're not." He slid an envelope across the counter. Her payment, she assumed. "There's another event next week, and the week after, and the week after that if you want them. But Lena, you need to decide what this is. Is it just a job or is it something more?" "What's the something more?" "A partnership. You keep shooting, keep capturing the truth of things. I keep introducing you to people, opening doors. We build something together. What exactly, I don't know yet. But I think it could be significant." "Why me?" It was the same question she'd asked at Maria, but it felt different now, weighted with everything that had happened since. "Because you're hungry," Adrian said simply. "Not just for money or success, but for meaning. For proof that you matter. I recognize that hunger because I had it once. Still have it, in different ways." He stood, signaling that the conversation was winding down. "Go home. Think about it. But Lena, whatever you decide, decide it for yourself. Not because you're scared, not because you think you should, because you actually want it." The driver was waiting outside when she left, and the ride back to Brooklyn felt longer than usual. Lena stared out the window at the city sliding past, the envelope of cash heavy in her bag, Adrian's question echoing in her head. What did she want? A month ago, the answer would have been simple. Stability, security, maybe someone who wouldn't leave her over text. But now, sitting in the back of a town car at 1 a.m. with $2,500 in her bag and the taste of expensive whiskey still on her tongue, those old wants felt small, insufficient. She wanted more, wanted to keep feeling like she mattered, like her perspective had value, wanted to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world, wanted, maybe, to see where this thing with Adrian led, even if she couldn't name what this thing actually was. Jessica was still awake when Lena got home, sitting on the couch with her laptop, probably catching up on emails from the property management company. She looked up when Lena came in, taking in the camera bag and Lena's probably obvious even in dim light exhaustion. "You've been going out a lot lately," Jessica said carefully. "The photography thing?" "Yeah." Lena set down the camera bag, collapsed onto the other end of the couch. "It's been good. Busy, but good." "Adrian treating you okay?" Something in Jessica's tone made Lena look at her more closely. "You knew. When you put his number in my phone, you knew I'd end up working with him." Jessica had the grace to look slightly guilty. "I suggested you when he mentioned needing a photographer. I might have shown him some of your old Instagram posts, the ones from before Marcus convinced you to stop posting your work." She paused. "I'm sorry if I overstepped. But Lena, you've been barely surviving for years. I thought maybe this could be a way out." "You could have told me. Would you have believed me if I'd said, 'Hey, my boss might offer you a job that could change your life'? Or would you have written it off as me being nice?" Lena couldn't argue with that. She probably would have dismissed it, convinced herself she wasn't qualified, talked herself out of it before it even started. "What do you know about him? Really know, not just the boss stuff." Jessica closed her laptop, giving Lena her full attention. "Adrian's complicated. He's connected to people most of us only see in the news. He's powerful in ways that aren't always visible, but he's also fair, and he's loyal to people who prove they're worth that loyalty. She hesitated. He's not dangerous to people in his circle, Lena, but he's absolutely dangerous to people outside it. You just need to figure out which side of that line you're on. How do I figure that out? You trust your gut. Has he given you any reason not to trust him? Lena thought about it. The deleted photo, the fair payment, the way he'd introduced her to his private world without expecting anything inappropriate in return, the respect in his voice when he talked about her work. No, she admitted. He's been surprisingly decent, actually. Then maybe just see where it goes. Jessica reopened her laptop. But Lena, be careful. Adrian's world isn't like ours. The stakes are higher, the consequences are bigger. Just don't lose yourself in it. Lena went to her room, lay on her bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Jessica's warning echoed in her head, mixing with James Cordova's cryptic advice and Adrian's talk of invisible currencies and partnerships. She should be terrified, should recognize all of this as a massive red flag, and walk away while she still could. Instead, she found herself already planning what equipment she'd need for the next event, already thinking about angles and lighting and how to capture whatever world Adrian showed her next. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "Thank you for tonight. You see things other people miss. That's a gift. Don't waste it." She stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I'm in. Whatever this is, I'm in." His response came immediately. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." The next event was a waterfront gala in Red Hook, and Adrian had undersold it as a small gathering. 300 people in formal wear, a jazz band, champagne towers, the whole spectacle. Lena moved through the crowd with her camera, more confident now, catching moments of performance and the occasional flash of authenticity beneath it. Adrian found her during a break, champagne flute in hand, looking amused. "You lied about the small gathering thing. I said it would be intimate." "I didn't say it would be small," he gestured to the crowd. "All these people? They're here because they want something from me or think I want something from them. It's theater. Your job is to find the moments when the masks slip." "Whose mask are you looking to see slip?" "Everyone's, including mine." He drained the champagne, set the empty flute on a passing waiter's tray. "There's someone I want you to meet. Come on." He led her through the crowd to where a man in his 40s stood alone, looking out at the water. He had the kind of face that was hard to read, handsome but closed off, like he'd learned early to keep everything important hidden. "Marcus Chen, meet Lena Carter." "Lena, Marcus handles acquisitions for one of my ventures." Lena shook his hand, professional, while Adrian continued. "Marcus was just telling me about a property deal that fell through. Something about the photography not capturing the space properly. Thought you two should talk." Adrian disappeared back into the crowd before Lena could protest, leaving her alone with Marcus Chen, who was studying her with undisguised curiosity. "So you're the photographer Adrian's been talking about?" "I'm a photographer he hired. I don't know about the talking about part. He doesn't shut up about you, actually. Your eye, your perspective, how you see things differently." Marcus smiled slightly. "It's unusual. He's not typically effusive about people." "Effusive seems like a strong word." "You haven't heard him on the subject." Marcus turned back to the water. "The property I mentioned, it's a commercial space in Dumbo. Beautiful building, terrible photos in the listing. My buyer walked because they couldn't envision the potential. Would you be interested in shooting it? Separately from your work with Adrian, I mean. I'd pay your standard rate." "I don't have a standard rate." "Then name one." Lena tried to keep her expression neutral while her brain raced. This was how it happened, wasn't it? One connection led to another, until suddenly you had a career instead of just a job. 2,000 for a half-day shoot, edited photos delivered within 48 hours. "Done. I'll have my assistant send you the details." Marcus pulled out his phone, probably making a note. "Adrian said you were smart. He was right." "You've known him long?" 8 years. He gave me my first real opportunity when everyone else in this city had written me off as too young, too inexperienced, too much of a risk." Marcus pocketed his phone. "I owe him everything. Most people here do, in one way or another. That's how Adrian operates. He invests in people everyone else overlooks, and he expects loyalty in return." "What happens if you're not loyal?" I don't know. I've never seen anyone betray him and stick around long enough to find out. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Excuse me, I should make the rounds. He left Lena standing alone, processing the conversation. Adrian invested in overlooked people and expected loyalty. She was an overlooked person he'd invested in. The math wasn't complicated, but the implications made her uneasy. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of faces and conversations. By the time it wound down around 2 a.m., Lena had shot nearly 600 photos and had 3 more potential clients, people who'd approached her directly, asking for cards she didn't have, settling for scribbling her email address on cocktail napkins. Adrian found her as she was packing up her equipment. Productive night? Your friend Marcus offered me a job, and 3 other people asked if I do commercial work. Good. You should take all of it. Build your own client base, not just rely on me. Is that what this was? You setting me up? I introduced you to people who need what you offer. What they do with that introduction is up to them. He paused. And up to you. You could have said no to Marcus. Could have told those other people you're not interested. You didn't. Because I need the money. You need a lot of things, Lena. Money's just the most obvious. He pulled out his phone, checked something. There's a car waiting for you. But before you go, next Friday, clear your schedule. All day, not just an evening. Why? Because I want to show you something, and because I think you're ready to see what this partnership could actually look like. He walked away before she could ask more questions, leaving her with an envelope of cash and a growing certainty that she'd agreed to something much bigger than she'd realized. The commercial shoot for Marcus went well, so well that he immediately hired her for 2 more properties. The 3 people from the gala followed through with their interest, and suddenly Lena had a calendar full of actual photography work, not just waitressing shifts she fit around everything else. She gave her notice at the diner on a Tuesday, her hands shaking as she told Miguel she was leaving. He hugged her, told her he'd always known she was meant for more than slinging coffee, and Lena cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes after her shift ended because it felt real now. She was actually doing this, actually betting her financial survival on her talent and Adrian's mysterious faith in her. Friday arrived faster than she'd expected. Adrian's instructions had been simple. Meet him at his brownstone at 9 a.m. Bring the camera, dress comfortably. She showed up in jeans and a sweater, camera bag over her shoulder, and found him waiting outside next to a black SUV she'd never seen before. We're going on a field trip, he said by way of greeting. Where? You'll see. They drove north out of the city through Westchester and into Connecticut. Adrian spent most of the drive on his phone, handling what sounded like complicated business in terse, efficient conversations. Lena watched the scenery change from urban to suburban to almost rural, wondering what could possibly be out here that required all-day clearance. They finally pulled up to a massive property, maybe 50 acres, with a main house that looked like something from a magazine and several smaller buildings scattered across the grounds. Adrian got out, gestured for her to follow. What is this place? Lena asked. Mine. Or it will be once the deal closes next week. He led her toward the main house. I'm converting it into a retreat space, somewhere the people in my world can come to actually think, create, strategize without the city's noise. And I want you to document the transformation. Document how? However you think best. Photography, yes, but also maybe video if you're interested, capturing the before, during, after. Telling the story of what this place becomes. He turned to face her. It's a 6-month project, Lena, maybe longer. I'm offering you the contract to oversee all visual documentation. Salary, not project-based. Benefits. Your own studio space here if you want it. Her brain stalled. Adrian, that's a full-time job. Yes. I don't know anything about video or running a long-term project like this. Then you'll learn. I'll bring in people to teach you what you need to know. He started walking again toward the main house. I'm not offering this because I think you already know how to do it. I'm offering it because I think you can figure it out, and because I want someone I trust controlling how this project is presented to the world. Trust. There was that word again, carrying weight she didn't know how to hold. They spent the next 4 hours walking the property, Adrian explaining his vision while Lena shot test footage on her phone, making notes about angles and lighting and equipment she'd need. The property was stunning. Rolling hills, a small lake, gardens that would be beautiful once someone put work into them. And the main house had bones that promised something special once renovated. Why me? Lena asked as they sat on the back porch of the main house, sharing sandwiches Adrian had brought. You could hire an established firm, people who actually know what they're doing. Established firms give me exactly what I ask for. No deviation, no creativity, no perspective I didn't already have. He looked at her directly. You give me things I didn't know I wanted. That night at the gallery, you caught James Cordova in a moment that told me more about his state of mind than 3 conversations had. You see truth, Lena. That's what I need for this project. What if I fail? Then you fail. But I don't think you will. He stood, brushed crumbs off his jeans. I need an answer by Monday. If it's yes, we'll draw up contracts and you'll start within 2 weeks. If it's no, we keep working together like we have been, and I'll find someone else for this project. The drive back was quieter, Lena's mind racing too fast for conversation. 6 months, benefits, her own studio space. It was the kind of opportunity she'd stopped believing existed for people like her. It was also terrifying, binding herself to Adrian's world more completely, betting everything on his faith in her abilities, stepping away from any safety net she might still have. When they pulled up to her building, Adrian said, Whatever you decide, decide it honestly. Don't say yes because you're grateful and don't say no because you're scared. Say yes because it's what you actually want, or say no because it actually doesn't fit your life. But be honest with yourself about which is which. Lena got out of the SUV, watched it pull away, and then sat on the steps of her building for an hour, trying to figure out what she actually wanted versus what fear told her she should want. Her phone rang. Sarah finally calling after weeks of texts that Lena had been too busy to properly respond to. Where have you been? Sarah demanded. You drop off the face of the earth, send me these cryptic texts about being busy, and now Jessica tells me you quit the diner? What's going on? I got a photography job, Lena said. Several, actually. Sarah, my life is completely different than it was a month ago. Different good or different scary? Both, definitely both. She told Sarah an edited version of the last month, the accidental photo to Adrian, the gallery job that turned into multiple jobs, the offer she'd just received. Left out the parts that felt too complicated to explain, the ways Adrian's world operated on rules she was still learning. So you're actually doing it, Sarah said when Lena finished. You're actually becoming a real photographer. I don't know if real is the right word. You're getting paid to take photos. That's literally the definition of being a professional photographer. Sarah paused. Are you going to take the 6-month contract? I don't know. It's a lot of commitment to someone I barely know. It's also a lot of opportunity. And from what you're telling me, this Adrian guy has been pretty straight with you so far. Another pause. Is there something you're not telling me? Some reason you don't trust him? Was there? Lena examined her instincts, trying to separate legitimate caution from habitual self-sabotage. Adrian had been fair, respectful, generous even. He'd opened doors without asking for anything inappropriate. He'd pushed her to value her own work without diminishing her in the process. No, Lena finally said. I think I'm just scared of wanting something this much and having it fall apart. Then maybe that's exactly why you should do it. Because you want it. After they hung up, Lena went inside, pulled out her laptop, and started making lists. Equipment she'd need, skills she'd have to learn, questions she should ask before signing any contract, ways this could go wrong, and ways it could go right. By Sunday night, she'd made her decision. Monday morning, she texted Adrian. Yes, I'm in. His response came within minutes. My lawyer will send over the contract tomorrow. Welcome aboard, Lena. I think we're going to do something remarkable together. Lena stared at the message, at the word remarkable, and tried to believe it. Tried to silence the voice that said people like her didn't get to do remarkable things, didn't get to build careers out of accidents and opportunities. But maybe that voice was wrong. Maybe Adrian was right, and she'd been dealing in an invisible currency this whole time without realizing it. Maybe honesty and perspective and the willingness to see truth were worth more than she'd ever understood. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something that would prove she'd always been worth more than the world told her she was. She opened her camera roll, looked at the test shots she'd taken at the Connecticut property. They weren't perfect, rough, experimental, full of amateur mistakes. But they also had something, a vision, a perspective that was entirely hers. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lena thought that might actually be enough. The contract arrived on Tuesday, 37 pages of legal language that Lena read 3 times before admitting she needed help understanding half of it. She took it to a lawyer Sarah recommended, a woman in Queens who did consultations for $200 and didn't ask too many questions about why a former waitress was signing a 6-month contract worth more than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. "It's generous," the lawyer said, flipping through pages with practiced efficiency. "Almost suspiciously so. You're sure this is legitimate?" "As sure as I can be." The termination clause is interesting. Either party can end the contract with 2 weeks' notice, no penalty. That's unusual for something this substantial. Most employers would want some kind of commitment guarantee. She looked up at Lena over her reading glasses. This man either trusts you completely or doesn't expect you to last long enough for termination to matter. Any idea which? Lena thought about Adrian's face when he'd shown her the property, the certainty in his voice when he'd said he thought they'd do something remarkable together. "The first one, I think." "Then you're either very lucky or walking into something you don't fully understand yet." The lawyer closed the contract. "My advice? Sign it. But keep your eyes open. And if anything starts feeling wrong, use that termination clause. 2 weeks is enough time to get out if you need to." Lena signed the contract that night, her hand shaking slightly as she wrote her name. She scanned it, emailed it back to Adrian's lawyer, and then sat in her apartment staring at her phone like it might explode. Adrian's text came an hour later. "Got the signed contract. Start date is the 15th. That gives you 2 weeks to wrap up your current commitments and prepare. I'll have equipment delivered to your apartment next week. Welcome to the team, officially." The team. Like she was part of something now, not just a random freelancer he'd taken a chance on. The weight of that settled in her chest, heavy and warm and terrifying all at once. The next 2 weeks disappeared into preparation. Adrian had been serious about the equipment, camera bodies she'd only ever dreamed of owning, lenses that cost more than her first car, lighting equipment, stabilizers for video work, a laptop powerful enough to handle the editing software she'd need. It arrived in waves, delivery people showing up at her apartment with boxes that Jessica helped her unpack, both of them half laughing at the absurdity of Lena's tiny bedroom being converted into a professional photography studio. "This is insane," Jessica said, holding up a camera lens that probably cost $15,000. "This is actually insane. Do you even know how to use this?" "I will." Lena was reading the manual for the main camera body, trying to absorb information faster than her brain could process it. "Adrian's sending someone to train me, a videographer he knows, supposed to show me the basics before I start." The videographer turned out to be a woman named Keiko, mid-30s with short purple hair, and the kind of confidence that came from being exceptional at what she did. She showed up on a Saturday morning with coffee and a no-nonsense attitude that Lena immediately appreciated. "Adrian says you're raw talent with no technical training," Keiko said, setting up one of the cameras. "That true?" "Pretty much." "Good. Means you haven't learned any bad habits yet." She handed Lena the camera. "We've got 2 days. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to not completely embarrass yourself. After that, you'll learn by doing. Sound fair?" It was the most intense 48 hours of Lena's life. Keiko ran her through camera settings, composition rules, lighting techniques, basic video editing, sound capture, all of it crammed into her brain until she felt like her head might split open. But by Sunday night, she could operate the equipment without feeling like she was going to break something, could see the difference between a decent shot and a great one, could envision how footage would cut together into something coherent. "You've got an eye," Keiko said as they were packing up. "Adrian was right about that. The technical stuff you'll learn. But the way you see things, that's either there or it's not. You've got it. Thanks for doing this. I owe Adrian. He gave me my first real break 10 years ago when I was sleeping on a friend's couch and about to give up on this whole career." Keiko paused at the door. "He does that. Finds people right before they're about to quit on themselves. Just don't make him regret trusting you. He doesn't give second chances often." After Keiko left, Lena lay on her bed surrounded by equipment manuals and tried not to think about the pressure of being someone's faith in her. Tried not to think about what happened when you failed someone who didn't give second chances. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Chen. Saw the photos from the Dumbo property. You're hired for the rest of our spring listings. Sending details tomorrow. Then Diana, the woman from Adrian's garden party. Adrian mentioned you're doing the retreat project. I'm organizing a wellness conference in May. Need a photographer. Interested? Then 3 more messages from people she'd met at various events, all asking about her availability, all offering work that would have seemed impossible 2 months ago. She screenshotted the messages, sent them to Adrian with a simple text. Is this you? His response? That's you. I just made the introductions. What they do with them is because of your work, not my influence. Get used to it. The 15th arrived cold and gray, early March wind cutting through Lena's jacket as she loaded equipment into the car Adrian had sent for her. Jessica hugged her goodbye like she was going off to war instead of just to Connecticut for a few days. Text me, Jessica said. Let me know you're okay. It's a photography job, not a crime ring. Just text me anyway. The property looked different than it had 2 weeks ago. Construction crews had already started work on the main house, and there were trucks and equipment scattered across the grounds. Adrian met her at the front entrance, wearing jeans and a work jacket, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. He showed her the studio space he'd had prepared, a converted barn that had been transformed into a workspace with editing equipment, storage for her gear, even a small apartment upstairs if she wanted to stay on site instead of commuting. It was more than she'd expected, better than anything she could have asked for. This is too much, she said, looking around at the professional setup. It's what you need to do the job right. Nothing more, nothing less. He gestured to the main house. Come on, I'll show you what we're working with. They spent the morning walking the property while Adrian explained his vision. The main house would have conference rooms, private offices, a library, space for workshops and creative sessions. The smaller buildings would be converted into guest houses. The gardens would be restored to something beautiful. And Lena's job was to document all of it, the destruction and reconstruction, the vision becoming reality, the moments that would tell the story of transformation. I want people to see what this place becomes, Adrian said as they stood on the back porch, looking out at the lake. But more than that, I want them to understand why it matters. This isn't just a real estate project. It's about creating space for the kind of thinking that changes things. And that story needs someone who can see past the obvious. No pressure, then. He smiled. You'll be fine. Trust yourself as much as I trust you. That became harder as the days progressed. Lena threw herself into the work, shooting hundreds of hours of footage, taking thousands of photos, trying to capture the essence of what Adrian was building. But the more she shot, the more she realized how much she didn't know. How to capture the scale of renovation work, how to make construction footage interesting. How to tell a visual story that built towards something instead of just documenting what existed. She called Keiko in a panic after her first week, certain she was failing, certain Adrian had made a mistake hiring her. You're overthinking it, Keiko said over the phone. Stop trying to make it perfect and just make it true. That's what Adrian hired you for. What if true isn't good enough? Then you're working for the wrong person. But you're not. So stop spiraling and go shoot something. Lena hung up, grabbed her camera, and went outside. It was late afternoon, golden hour light cutting across the property in a way that made everything look softer than it was. She found one of the construction workers taking a break, sitting on a stack of lumber and staring at the main house with an expression that looked like pride mixed with exhaustion. She raised her camera, caught the moment, and knew immediately it was exactly what the project needed, the human element behind the transformation. She showed it to Adrian that night when he came by to check on progress. He studied the image for a long time, then looked at her with something that might have been respect. This, more of this. I don't want sterile documentation. I want the story of the people making this happen. That wasn't in the brief. Consider the brief updated. He handed back her camera. You see things, Lena. Stop questioning whether you're seeing them right, and just show me what you see. That became her approach. Stop overthinking. Start trusting her instincts. She interviewed construction workers, captured their pride in their work, shot time-lapse sequences of walls coming down and being rebuilt. Found moments of unexpected beauty in the chaos of renovation, dust particles caught in sunlight, the geometry of exposed beams, hands weathered by decades of labor creating something new. By the end of March, she had enough footage for a preliminary cut. She spent 3 sleepless nights editing it into a 5-minute piece that told the story of the first month of transformation, then sent it to Adrian with a message that said simply, "First draft. Be gentle." He showed up at her studio 2 hours later. She hadn't expected him. He usually stayed in the city during the week, only coming up on weekends. But there he was, looking more agitated than she'd seen him. "We need to talk," he said. Her stomach dropped. This was it. He'd watched the video, realized she wasn't good enough, was about to fire her with the 2-week termination clause. She'd failed, just like some part of her had always known she would. "The video is extraordinary," Adrian said, and Lena's brain stuttered trying to reconcile his words with his expression. "It's exactly what I wanted and better than I knew to ask for. But Lena, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" He pulled out his phone, showed her a series of photos. They were shots she'd taken at the waterfront gala weeks ago, candid moments of Adrian in conversation with various people. Except these weren't her edited versions. These were raw files she hadn't posted anywhere, hadn't shared with anyone except Adrian, and they were on a gossip blog with the headline, "Vale's Mystery Woman. Who is she?" "I don't understand," Lena said, scrolling through the blog post. "These are my photos. How did they— Someone on my team leaked them, or someone hacked your storage, or both." Adrian's voice was tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was working very hard not to be angry. "Either way, you're now connected to me publicly, and that makes you visible to people who might want to use that connection." "Use it how?" "To get to me, to gather information, to create leverage." He took the phone back. "I've dealt with this before. It's not your fault, but it is your problem now, mine too." "What do we do?" "Short term? Nothing. Responding confirms the speculation. But Lena, you need to understand what you've stepped into. My world, the real one, not the gallery parties and networking events, it operates in shadows. There are people who would love to find a weakness, an access point, someone they could exploit to get to me, and a new face in my circle, someone with access to private moments, someone I clearly trust." He met her eyes. "That makes you a target." The word target hit her like cold water. "You're saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying you need to be careful, more careful than you've been. Your apartment building has security now. I had it installed yesterday. The car service isn't a luxury, it's a safety measure. And if anyone approaches you asking questions about me, about my business, about anything, you tell me immediately." "This is insane." Lena sat down hard on her desk chair. "I'm a photographer. I'm nobody. Why would anyone care about me?" "Because you're close to me. That's all it takes." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. This is what I meant when I said my world operates differently. There are stakes here that don't exist in normal life. Maybe I should just quit. Use the termination clause, walk away before this gets worse." "Is that what you want?" She thought about it, really thought about it. The work she'd been doing, the video she'd just finished, the feeling of creating something that mattered, balanced against the possibility of being a target for people she didn't even know, for reasons she didn't fully understand. "No," she finally said. "I don't want to quit. But Adrian, I need you to be honest with me. What exactly do you do? Not the 'I connect people' answer, the real answer." He was quiet for a long moment, and Lena thought he might not answer at all. Then he said, "I facilitate things that need to happen, but can't happen through official channels. Real estate deals that require discretion. Connections between people who can't be seen connecting publicly. Information that needs to move without leaving traces. I operate in the spaces between legal and illegal, always on the right side of the line, but close enough to it that people get nervous." "That's incredibly vague." "It's also the truth. I'm not a criminal, Lena, but I'm not a saint either. I'm someone who makes things work when normal methods don't, and that makes me valuable to some people and threatening to others. And now I'm caught in the middle of that. You were caught the moment you sent me that photo. We just didn't know it yet." He moved to the window, looked out at the property. "I can increase security, can make sure you're protected, but I can't make you invisible again. That ship has sailed." Lena joined him at the window, watching the construction crews wrap up for the day. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if she weren't processing the fact that her life had just gotten exponentially more complicated. "Who would want to use me to get to you?" she asked. "Competitors, people I've outmaneuvered in deals, anyone who thinks I have information they want." He paused. "There's a situation developing with a property acquisition. The other party isn't happy about losing the bid. They might try to gather leverage, find ways to pressure me into backing off. And I'm leveraged now. Potentially. Which is why I need you to be smart. Don't talk to reporters. Don't post about your work publicly. Don't give anyone information about what we're doing here, what you see, who you meet. I already don't do any of that." "Good. Keep not doing it." He turned to face her. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you this could happen. Should have prepared you better." "Would I have taken the job if you had?" "Honestly, I don't know." They stood in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Lena thought about Jessica's warning that Adrian's world had higher stakes and bigger consequences. Thought about James Cordova saying Adrian was kinder than people realized, but that his kindness shouldn't be mistaken for weakness. All the pieces clicking into place to form a picture she should have seen earlier. "I'm staying," she said finally, "but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "No more surprises. If there's something I need to know about what I'm involved in, you tell me. I can't navigate this if I'm operating blind." "Fair enough?" He offered his hand. "No more surprises. You have my word." She shook his hand, and the formality of the gesture felt absurd given everything else. But it also felt necessary, like they were re-establishing the terms of their partnership with new understanding of what it actually meant. Adrian left shortly after, and Lena spent the rest of the evening installing the security system app on her phone, memorizing the faces of the security team Adrian had hired, trying to adjust to the fact that her life now included concepts like being a target and operating in shadows. She called Sarah, needed to hear her friend's voice even if she couldn't explain everything that was happening. "You sound weird," Sarah said immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Lena pressed her palm against her forehead. "This job is amazing. The work is incredible. But it's also, there are complications I didn't expect." "Complications with Adrian?" "Complications because of Adrian. His world is, Sarah, it's not what I thought. It's bigger, more dangerous maybe. And I'm in the middle of it now, whether I meant to be or not." "Do you trust him?" That was the question, wasn't it? Did she trust Adrian Vale, a man who operated in moral gray areas and had enough enemies that his photographer needed security? A man who'd been nothing but straight with her, but also clearly had secrets she was only beginning to understand? "Yeah," Lena said. "I do." Which is probably stupid. Or maybe your instincts are better than you give them credit for. Sarah paused. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want to have to identify your body." "Jesus, Sarah. I'm serious. This all sounds very, I don't know, intense. Make sure you know what you're signing up for." After they hung up, Lena pulled up the video she'd sent Adrian, watched it again with fresh eyes. The transformation of the property. The workers building something new from something old. It was a metaphor she hadn't intended but couldn't unsee now, herself being rebuilt by this experience, by Adrian's faith in her, by the opportunity to become something more than what she'd been. But transformation hurt. Required tearing down what existed before building something new. And she was in the middle of that process now, caught between who she'd been and who she might become, unable to go back but not sure yet how to move forward. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw your photos on the blog. Beautiful work. Would love to discuss a potential collaboration. Coffee sometime?" She stared at the message, Adrian's warnings echoing in her head. Could be a legitimate client. Could be someone fishing for information. No way to tell the difference without more context. She forwarded the message to Adrian with a question mark. His response came immediately. "Don't respond. I'm having my team look into it." This was her life now. Every message screened, every interaction analyzed for threats. It should have felt oppressive, paranoid. Instead, it felt oddly clarifying, The stakes were real, the danger was real, and she was choosing to stay anyway. The next few weeks settled into a strange new normal. Lena worked on the property documentation during the day, but now there was always a security presence nearby. Not obvious, not intrusive, but there. A reminder that she wasn't just a photographer anymore. She was a person connected to Adrian Vale, and that meant something in ways she was still learning to understand. The mystery message had turned out to be legitimate. A magazine editor who'd genuinely seen her work and wanted to discuss a feature. But Adrian's caution had been proven right when two other approaches turned out to be reporters fishing for information about Adrian's business dealings. "See?" Adrian said when she mentioned it. "Trust your instincts, but verify everything. That's how you survive in this world." She met more of his inner circle as April progressed. Diana became something like a friend, stopping by the property occasionally to check on the wellness conference planning and staying to talk about everything else. Marcus brought clients to see the transformation, always making sure to mention Lena's documentation work, building her reputation whether she asked him to or not. James Cordova visited once, walking the grounds with Adrian and talking in low voices about things that weren't Lena's business, but he took time afterward to tell her the video work was exceptional. "You're building something real here," James said, "not just documenting Adrian's project. Building your own career, your own credibility. That's smart." "I'm just doing the work." "You're doing more than that. You're establishing yourself as someone serious, someone talented, someone who can be trusted with important projects. That matters in this world, probably more than the photography itself." Lena thought about that conversation while editing footage later. The idea that trust and credibility mattered more than talent was uncomfortable but probably true. She'd seen it in how Adrian operated. He didn't just hire the most qualified people. He hired people he could trust, people who understood the invisible rules of his world. And she was becoming one of those people, learning to read between lines, to understand what wasn't being said, to recognize when a question was actually a test. It was exhausting. But it was also oddly thrilling, like learning a language she hadn't known existed. The first weekend in May, Adrian threw a small gathering at the property, maybe 30 people, mostly from his inner circle, to show them the progress on the retreat space. Lena documented it automatically now, camera in hand more often than not, capturing moments without thinking about it. She caught Adrian giving Diana a tour of the restored gardens, both of them laughing at something. Caught Marcus in conversation with a woman Lena didn't recognize, their body language suggesting complicated history. Caught the moment when James Cordova looked at the main house and smiled, actually smiled, like he saw something that made him happy. And she caught the moment when a man she'd never seen before arrived late, walked straight to Adrian, and pulled him into a conversation that made Adrian's entire expression shut down. Lena lowered her camera, watching from a distance. The man was younger than most of Adrian's associates, maybe early 30s, with the kind of expensive casual style that suggested old money. And whatever he was saying to Adrian, Adrian didn't like it. Diana appeared at Lena's elbow. "That's Julian Cross. Adrian's told you about him?" "No. Should he have?" "Probably. Julian's been trying to acquire this property for 2 years. He's not happy Adrian outbid him." Diana's expression was carefully neutral. "He's also the type to hold grudges and create problems. So if he approaches you, be careful what you say." "Why would he approach me?" "Because you're new, you're visible, and you're close to Adrian. That makes you interesting to people like Julian." Diana touched Lena's arm lightly. "I'm not trying to scare you, just be aware. Not everyone at these gatherings is friendly." Julian didn't approach her that night, but Lena felt his attention several times, looked up to find him watching her with an expression that was hard to read. Not hostile exactly, but not friendly either. Calculating, maybe? Like he was trying to determine what she was worth. She mentioned it to Adrian later after most of the guests had left and they were sitting on the back porch with glasses of wine. "Julian's trying to figure out your role," Adrian said. "Whether you're just an employee or something more. Whether you might be useful to him." "Useful how?" "Information, probably. He'd love to know what I'm planning for this space, who I'm partnering with, what deals I'm working on." Adrian took a drink. "Don't let him charm you. He's good at making people feel special, feel important, but it's always transactional with him." "I'm not an idiot." "I know. But Julian's very good at what he does, and what he does is find weaknesses and exploit them." "You think I'm a weakness?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. I think you're becoming something I'd protect. That's different from a weakness, but Julian might not see the distinction. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning Lena wasn't sure how to interpret. Was he saying she mattered to him, or just that she was a valuable asset he didn't want compromised? And was there even a difference in his world? I should go, she said, standing. It's late. Lena. Adrian stood too. Be careful around Julian, and if he does approach you, tell me immediately. I need to know what he's fishing for. She nodded, grabbed her camera bag, and headed to her car. The security guard walked her to the vehicle, waited until she was inside before returning to his post. Another reminder that her life had changed in ways both subtle and significant. The drive back to Brooklyn took an hour, and Lena spent most of it replaying Adrian's words. Something he'd protect. Becoming something that mattered. She'd built her entire adult life around trying to matter to someone. To Marcus, to her family, to herself. And failing over and over again. And now here was Adrian, casually mentioning that she mattered to him. Like it was just a fact. Something obvious. It scared her how much she wanted it to be true. Her apartment felt empty when she got home, Jessica gone for the weekend visiting family. Lena unpacked her equipment, downloaded the day's footage, and started editing almost on autopilot. She found the moment when Julian had approached Adrian, zoomed in on both their faces, Adrian's carefully controlled anger, Julian's satisfaction at having caused it. Whatever history existed between those two men, it wasn't resolved, and somehow without meaning to, Lena had positioned herself right in the middle of it. She should have been terrified, should have been running for the exit, using that 2-week termination clause to get out while she still could. Instead, she kept editing, kept working, kept building something real out of the opportunity Adrian had given her. Because walking away now wouldn't just mean losing a job. It would mean proving right every person who'd ever told her she wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't worth the investment, and she was so tired of proving them right. Her phone buzzed around midnight. A text from Adrian. Thank you for tonight. The footage you captured will tell the story better than I could have hoped. Sleep well, Lena. She stared at the message, at the casual intimacy of wishing her a good night, and felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job anymore. Hadn't been for a while, if she was honest. This was something more complicated, more dangerous, more real than anything she'd experienced before. And despite everything, the threats, the complications, the way Adrian's world operated on rules she was still learning, she didn't want to go back to who she'd been before. She texted back, "Thank you for trusting me with it. Good night, Adrian." Then she turned off her phone, crawled into bed, and tried not to think about what it meant that a simple text message from him could make her feel like she mattered in a way she'd been searching for her whole life. Julian Cross showed up at her apartment building on a Tuesday morning in mid-May, leaning against an expensive car like he'd been waiting for her. Lena spotted him from half a block away and considered turning around, but that would have been obvious, cowardly. So she kept walking, camera bag over her shoulder, pretending her heart wasn't suddenly racing. "Lena Carter," he said as she approached, his smile easy. "Practiced. I was hoping I'd run into you." "This isn't running into me. This is waiting outside my building." She didn't slow down, forced him to fall into step beside her. "How did you even know where I live?" "I know a lot of things, like the fact that you're doing exceptional work for Adrian's project. I've seen some of the preliminary footage. Really impressive." She stopped at her building's entrance, the new security system requiring a key card Adrian's team had installed. "What do you want, Julian?" "To talk. 5 minutes of your time, that's all I'm asking." He gestured to a coffee shop across the street. "Public place. Lots of witnesses. I promise I'm not here to kidnap you or whatever paranoid scenario Adrian's put in your head." "Adrian warned me you'd try to charm me." "Did it work?" Despite herself, Lena almost smiled. There was something disarming about his directness, the way he acknowledged the game they were both playing. "You have 3 minutes, and I'm texting someone to let them know where I am." "Smart. Adrian's taught you well." They crossed to the coffee shop, and Lena fired off a quick text to Diana. Not Adrian, because going straight to Adrian felt like admitting Julian was more important than he was. Diana's response came immediately. "Be careful. Don't tell him anything. I'm nearby if you need backup." Julian bought them both coffee. He somehow knew she took hers black, and they sat at a window table where anyone passing by could see them. He'd been right about the paranoid scenario thing, but Lena wasn't about to admit it. So, Julian said, leaning back in his chair, you're probably wondering what my angle is. I'm wondering why you think I'd talk to you when Adrian specifically told me not to. Because you're curious. Because you're smart enough to know that Adrian's version of events isn't the only version. And because I think you're tired of being kept in the dark about what you're actually involved in. He took a sip of coffee. Am I wrong? He wasn't wrong, which annoyed her. You have 2 minutes left. Adrian and I used to be partners. 5 years ago, we co-owned several properties, worked together on deals that made us both very wealthy. Then he decided he wanted full control, orchestrated a buyout that was technically legal but ethically questionable, and left me with a fraction of what I'd invested. Julian's expression remained pleasant, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. That property in Connecticut? We found it together. I spent 2 years negotiating with the owner, building trust, laying groundwork. And then Adrian swooped in at the last minute with an offer I couldn't match. So you're bitter about losing a business deal. That's what this is about? I'm bitter about being betrayed by someone I trusted. There's a difference. He set down his coffee. But that's not why I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you because I think you should know who you're working for. The real Adrian Vale, not the version he shows you. And you're going to tell me the truth out of the goodness of your heart? I'm going to tell you the truth because you deserve to know it before you get hurt. Julian pulled out his phone, slid it across the table. On the screen was a news article from 3 years ago. Real estate deal gone wrong. Investors claim fraud. Lena scanned the article. It detailed a property development that had collapsed, leaving several small investors bankrupt. Adrian's name appeared multiple times, though he'd never been charged with anything. The article mentioned an investigation that had been dropped due to lack of evidence. He walked away clean, Julian said quietly. The investors didn't. Some of them lost everything. And Adrian? He made $10 million on the deal. You're showing me an article where he wasn't charged with anything and expecting me to believe he's a criminal? I'm showing you a pattern. Adrian operates in gray areas. He's brilliant at it, stays just inside the line, never quite does anything prosecutable. But the damage he leaves behind is real. Those investors. Real people whose lives he ruined. Julian took back his phone. I'm not trying to turn you against him. I'm trying to make sure you go into this with your eyes open. My eyes are open, and what I see is someone who gave me an opportunity when everyone else saw a waitress who wasn't worth their time. Lena stood. Your 3 minutes are up. Lena, wait. Julian stood too. I'm not the villain here. I know that's what Adrian's told you, but I'm really not. I'm just someone who learned the hard way that Adrian Vale's loyalty has limits. And I don't want you to learn that the same way I did. Why do you care? Because you remind me of who I was when I first started working with him. Talented, hungry, willing to overlook warning signs because the opportunity was too good to pass up. His expression was almost gentle. I just want you to be careful, that's all. Lena walked out without responding, her coffee untouched on the table. She made it half a block before she had to stop, lean against a building, try to process what had just happened. Her phone was already buzzing, Diana calling. You okay? Diana asked immediately. Yeah, he's gone. I'm fine. What did he want? To tell me Adrian's a terrible person who ruins lives. Lena closed her eyes. Diana, is any of it true? That article about the investors? It's true that the deal went bad and people lost money. It's not true that Adrian did anything illegal or even unethical. The investigation cleared him completely. Diana's voice was firm. Julian's version of events is designed to make Adrian look like a monster, but the reality is more complicated. Those investors took risks, the market shifted, the deal collapsed. It happens. Adrian didn't cause it. And the partnership between them? Also more complicated than Julian makes it sound. But that's not my story to tell. You should ask Adrian directly. Lena thanked her and hung up, then stood on the sidewalk trying to decide what to do. She could call Adrian, tell him about the encounter, let him spin his version of events. Or she could sit with the uncertainty, with the knowledge that everyone in this world had their own truth, and she'd never know which one was actually real. Her phone buzzed again, Adrian this time. Diana told me Julian approached you. Are you all right? She stared at the message, at the concern that felt genuine even through text. This was the moment. She could ask him about the article, about Julian's accusations, about whether any of it was true, or she could trust the man who'd believed in her when no one else had, who'd given her a career and treated her with more respect than anyone in her life had. She texted back, "I'm fine. He tried to turn me against you, didn't work. We should talk, though, later, when you have time. Come to the brownstone tonight." 7. We'll talk about everything. She spent the rest of the day at the Connecticut property, shooting footage of the restored library, trying not to think about Julian's words, or the article, or the way doubt had crept into spaces that had felt certain before. The construction crew noticed her distraction. She missed shots she normally would have caught, had to reshoot sequences because she wasn't paying attention. "You good, Lena?" one of the workers asked during a break. Tom, a carpenter in his 50s who'd been there since the beginning. "Just tired." "You've been working yourself pretty hard. Adrian know you're out here 7 days a week?" "It's my job." "Job's supposed to end at some point. You're living here more than you're living at home." Tom studied her with the kind of concern that reminded her of her father. "Whatever you're running from or toward, make sure it's worth it." She left earlier than usual, drove back to Brooklyn in a fog of exhaustion and confusion. Changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that felt like armor, casual enough to not look like she was trying too hard, substantial enough to make her feel less vulnerable. Then she took the subway to the West Village and showed up at Adrian's brownstone exactly at 7. He answered the door himself, unusual since Diana or someone else typically handled that. He looked tired too, she noticed, like whatever he'd been dealing with had worn him down more than he wanted to admit. "Come in," he said. "I ordered food. Hope you're hungry." She wasn't, but she followed him to the kitchen anyway. The table was set for 2, Thai takeout in the center, wine already poured. It felt intimate, deliberate, like he'd planned this as more than just a conversation about Julian. "So," Adrian said once they were seated, "Julian told you I'm a monster who ruins lives. What else?" He showed me an article about investors who lost money on a deal you were involved in. The Riverside project, 3 years ago. Adrian didn't look away, didn't flinch. "You want the truth? Or the version that makes me look good?" "The truth." "The truth is that project was doomed from the start. The investors were warned, repeatedly, that the market conditions were wrong, that the timeline was too aggressive, that the returns they wanted weren't realistic. They invested anyway because they thought they knew better than the experts." He took a drink of wine. "When it collapsed, they blamed me instead of their own bad judgment. The investigation found no wrongdoing because there was no wrongdoing. I followed every regulation, disclosed every risk. They just didn't want to hear it." "Julian said you made $10 million on that deal." "I did. Because I structured my involvement differently than they did. I protected myself." "That's not fraud, Lena. That's being smart." He leaned forward. "I could have lost money to make them feel better, could have pretended their losses were my responsibility when they weren't, but I didn't build what I have by making bad decisions to spare people's feelings." "That sounds cold." "It is cold, but it's honest." He held her gaze. "I'm not a saint. I've never pretended to be. I operate in a world where people make calculated risks, and sometimes those risks don't pay off. That's not me being cruel, that's just reality." Lena picked at the pad thai, trying to organize her thoughts. "What about Julian? What's the real story there?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him deciding how much to tell her. "Julian and I were partners for 3 years. We made a lot of money together. We also had very different ideas about how to operate. He wanted to take shortcuts, cut corners, operate closer to the line than I was comfortable with. When I realized he was putting our business at risk, I bought him out. He's angry because he thinks I betrayed him. The reality is, I protected myself from his recklessness. He said the Connecticut property was his find, that you stole it from him. He mentioned it to me 2 years ago, said he was working on acquiring it. I didn't pursue it at the time. Then 6 months ago, the owner reached out to me directly, not Julie and me, and said he'd rather sell to someone he trusted. I made an offer. Julian found out and tried to outbid me. I won." Adrian's voice was even, factual. "Julian thinks he owned the opportunity because he thought of it first. But in my world, you don't own anything until the deal is closed. Thinking about it doesn't count." "So you did take it from him?" "I took an opportunity that was offered to me. If that's a crime, every successful person in Manhattan is guilty." He set down his fork. "Lena, I need you to understand something. Julian is dangerous because he's smart and charming and knows exactly how to make people doubt me. Everything he told you today? Technically true. But the context, the full picture, that's what he leaves out. He wants you to see me as a villain, so you'll start questioning your place in my world. And if you start questioning, you become vulnerable. And if you're vulnerable, he can use you. Use me how? To get information, to create leverage, to hurt me through you. Adrian reached across the table, covered her hand with his. The touch was warm, grounding. I know this is a lot. I know you signed up for photography work, not corporate warfare and psychological games. If you want out, I'll understand. The termination clause is there for a reason. Lena looked at their hands, at the way his fingers curled around hers like he was anchoring her to something solid. She thought about the last 3 months, the work she'd done, the person she'd become, the way Adrian had believed in her when she'd barely believed in herself. Thought about Julian's warnings and Diana's concern and the article that proved nothing except that business was complicated and people got hurt. I don't want out, she said quietly, but I need you to promise me something else. No more letting me walk into situations blind. If someone like Julian is going to approach me, I need to know beforehand. I need context, history, enough information to protect myself. Fair. He squeezed her hand once, then let go. From now on, you're in the inner circle. Full transparency on anything that might affect you. What does inner circle mean exactly? It means you're not just an employee anymore. You're someone I trust, someone I'd protect, someone who has access to the real information instead of just the public face. He paused. It also means the stakes get higher. The target on your back gets bigger. People like Julian will try harder to get to you. Are you ready for that? I don't know, but I'm not running from it either. Good enough. Adrian stood, started clearing dishes. Stay for a while. We can watch something mindless, decompress from the day. You look like you need it. She should go home. Should maintain some kind of professional boundary, some distance that would keep this from becoming more complicated than it already was. But her apartment felt empty lately, and Adrian's brownstone felt like safety, and she was tired of pretending she didn't want to be here. Okay, she said, but I get to pick what we watch. They ended up on his couch with a movie neither of them really paid attention to, talking instead about everything except work. She learned he'd grown up in Boston, that his mother had been a teacher and his father a contractor, that he'd put himself through business school working construction jobs and sleeping on friends' couches. Learned he collected first edition books and couldn't cook to save his life, and had a sister in Seattle he didn't talk to enough. And she told him things she hadn't told anyone in years, about her father leaving when she was 12, about dropping out of college because she couldn't afford it, about the 3 years with Marcus where she'd slowly shrunk herself to fit his idea of who she should be. He was an idiot, Adrian said when she finished. Anyone who made you feel like you needed to be smaller doesn't deserve you. That's a nice thing to say. It's a true thing to say. There's a difference. He shifted on the couch, turning to face her more directly. Lena, can I ask you something? And you can tell me it's none of my business if you want. Okay. That night you sent me the photo, the accidental one. What were you actually trying to do? Not the mechanics of sending it to the wrong person, but what did you need in that moment? She thought about it, about the bathroom floor and the wine, and the feeling of being completely erased by Marcus's text message. I needed to feel like I existed, like I was real, visible, worth seeing, even if it was just Sarah seeing me, just one person acknowledging that I was there and mattered. She met his eyes. I know that sounds pathetic. It sounds honest and painful, and like every other human experience of wanting to be seen. He was quiet for a moment. You know what I saw when I got that photo? Not someone being desperate or pathetic. Someone being brave enough to be vulnerable. That's rare, Lena. Most people spend their whole lives hiding anything real. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was drunk and sad. Sometimes those are the only times we're honest enough to be brave. He smiled slightly. I'm glad you sent it to me, even if it was an accident, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. Where's here? I don't know yet. Somewhere better than where we started, I think. The movie ended and another one started automatically, but neither of them moved to turn it off. Lena felt the exhaustion of the day catching up with her, her eyes getting heavy, and she should have left an hour ago, but Adrian's couch was comfortable and his presence felt steady, and she was so tired of always being the one who left first. She woke up to early morning light filtering through the windows and a blanket that hadn't been on her when she'd fallen asleep. Adrian was in the kitchen, making coffee, still wearing yesterday's clothes like he'd slept on the other couch, or maybe not slept at all. "Morning," he said when he noticed she was awake. "Coffee?" "Please." She sat up, tried to finger comb her hair into something less chaotic. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to crash here." "You needed sleep, you got it. Nothing to apologize for." He handed her a mug. "I'm heading to the office in an hour, but take your time. Lock up when you leave." "Adrian." She stopped, not sure what she wanted to say. "Thank you" felt insufficient. "This is getting complicated" felt too obvious. "I trust you" felt too vulnerable. "I know," he said, like he understood all of it. "Me too." He left her sitting on his couch with coffee and confusion and the growing certainty that whatever was happening between them had crossed some invisible line in the night. They were in something together now. Not just a working relationship, not just a professional partnership, but something more tangled and dangerous and real. She went home, showered, changed, and headed to the Connecticut property. Diana was already there, overseeing some detail about the wellness conference setup, and she took one look at Lena's face and steered her to a quiet corner. "You stayed at Adrian's last night." It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. "I fell asleep on his couch. Nothing happened. I didn't ask if something happened. I asked if you stayed." Diana's expression was unreadable. "Lena, I like you. I think you're good for Adrian. You make him remember there's more to life than deals and power plays. But you need to be careful." "Everyone keeps telling me that." "Because it's true. Adrian's world is dangerous enough when you're just an employee. But if you become something more to him, if you matter in the way I think you're starting to matter, the danger increases exponentially." Diana touched her arm. "Julian approaching you yesterday? That was a test. He was seeing if you were vulnerable, if you could be turned. Next time, it won't be a conversation over coffee. Next time, it'll be something worse." "What do you mean, something worse?" "I mean, people who want to hurt Adrian will see you as the easiest way to do it, and they won't be nice about it." Diana's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you, because I think you're in this now, whether you meant to be or not. And if you're going to survive it, you need to understand what you're actually dealing with." Lena wanted to argue, wanted to say she could handle herself. But the truth was she'd been operating on instinct and hope, trusting that Adrian would protect her without really understanding what she needed protection from. "Tell me," she said, "what am I actually dealing with?" Diana looked around, making sure they were still alone. "Adrian has enemies. Real ones, not just business rivals who are annoyed they lost a deal. People who would hurt him if they could, who've tried before and failed. He's protected because he's smart and careful and has good security. But you? You're new, you're visible, and you're clearly important to him. That makes you a vulnerability. So what do I do? You stay close to the people Adrian trusts. You don't go anywhere alone that you don't have to. You tell security where you are, where you're going, and if anything feels wrong, a message that seems off, someone approaching you unexpectedly, anything, you report it immediately." Diana paused. "And you decide whether what you're building with Adrian is worth the cost. Because there is a cost, Lena. There always is in his world." The rest of the day passed in a haze of work and worry. Lena shot footage mechanically, her mind elsewhere, trying to process everything Diana had said. By the time she wrapped up around 6, she felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Her phone buzzed as she was packing up. A text from a number she didn't recognize. The photo blog was just the beginning. "You should leave while you still can." Her hands went cold. She screenshotted the message, forwarded it to Adrian and Diana simultaneously, then showed it to the security guard who'd been assigned to the property. "Stay inside," he said immediately, pulling out his own phone. "I'm calling this in." 20 minutes later, Adrian's SUV pulled up, and he climbed out looking more agitated than she'd ever seen him. He came straight to her, hands on her shoulders, eyes scanning her face like he was checking for damage. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just a text message. It's a threat. That's not fine. He pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. My security team traced the number. It's a burner, probably already destroyed. But the message came from someone who knows about the photo blog, knows you're working here, knows enough to try to scare you. Mission accomplished then. Oh, Lena, this is serious. His grip on her shoulders tightened slightly. Someone is escalating, and I need to know right now if you want out. Because if you stay, this is going to get worse before it gets better. She thought about Diana's words, about costs and consequences, thought about Julian's warning and the article and all the evidence that Adrian's world was exactly as dangerous as everyone kept telling her it was. And then she thought about the person she'd been 3 months ago, invisible, disposable, convinced she didn't matter. Thought about the work she'd done, the career she was building, the way Adrian looked at her like she was someone worth protecting. I'm not leaving, she said. But Adrian, I need to know what we're actually up against. Who would send something like this? What do they want? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He pulled her into a hug, quick and tight, like he needed the physical reassurance that she was safe. Come on, you're staying at the brownstone tonight, non-negotiable. I have a perfectly good apartment that someone just threatened you at. You're not going back there until we know who's behind this and what their play is. He was already guiding her toward his SUV. Grab your essentials. Everything else can wait. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could take care of herself. But the truth was she was scared, and Adrian's brownstone felt safer than her apartment right now, and she was tired of pretending she didn't need the protection he was offering. The drive back to the city was quiet, Adrian on the phone most of the way, issuing instructions to his security team in a voice that left no room for argument. Lena stared out the window, watching Connecticut slide into New York, and tried not to think about the fact that she'd just become someone who needed armed security and safe houses. When they arrived at the brownstone, Diana was already there, along with James Cordova and 2 other men Lena didn't recognize. They'd converted Adrian's dining room into some kind of command center, laptops open, phones out, everyone looking serious. Lena, James said when she walked in, you all right? Everyone keeps asking me that. Because everyone's worried about you. He gestured to a chair. Sit. We need to talk about what happens next. What happened next, apparently, was a security briefing that felt more appropriate for a spy movie than her actual life. They went through potential threats. Julian was the obvious suspect, but there were others. Business rivals with grudges. People who'd lost money on deals Adrian had won. They discussed protection protocols, communication security, what to do if she was approached or followed or threatened again. This is insane, Lena finally said, cutting through someone's explanation of encrypted messaging apps. I'm a photographer. I take pictures of buildings. Why does my life suddenly require the kind of security people use when they're witness protecting someone? Because you're connected to Adrian, Diana said gently. And Adrian has enemies who would use any weakness to hurt him. Right now, you're the most visible weakness he has. I'm not weak. That's not what I meant. Weakness in this context means vulnerability, something someone could exploit. Diana looked at Adrian. She needs to understand the full picture, not just the business rivals part. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, looking more tired than Lena had seen him. There's a situation, a deal I'm working on that's worth a significant amount of money. The other party is someone who doesn't lose gracefully. They've made threats before, nothing direct, nothing prosecutable, but threats nonetheless. And if they think hurting you would give them leverage over me, they won't hesitate. Who? Preston Carmichael. You wouldn't know the name, but let's call him old money with new grudges. We're competing for the same acquisition, and he's losing, has been losing for months. And he's the type who'd rather burn everything down than accept defeat. James added, Preston's also connected to Julian. They're not friends exactly, but they move in the same circles. It's possible Julian fed him information about you, about your importance to Adrian. So Julian sent the text? Maybe. Or maybe Preston did, or maybe someone else entirely. Adrian sat down across from her, elbows on knees, looking at her directly. The point is we don't know, and until we do, you're not safe. So you stay here, you follow security protocols, and you let us handle tracking down whoever's behind this. For how long? As long as it takes. Lena looked around the room at all these powerful, capable people organizing her protection like she was some kind of asset that needed safeguarding. Part of her was grateful. Another part felt like she'd lost all control over her own life. "I need air," she said, standing. "Is the garden still off limits, or can I at least go outside?" "Garden's fine," Adrian said. "Stay within sight of the house." She went outside, stood in the middle of Adrian's impossible Manhattan garden, and tried to breathe. The city noise was muted here, filtered through brick walls and careful landscaping, and for a moment she could almost pretend her life hadn't just become something out of a thriller. Her phone buzzed. "Sarah, just saw you haven't posted anything in weeks. You alive?" Lena typed back. "Alive, busy. Miss you. Miss you too. Coffee soon? I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Soon. Promise." She pocketed the phone, feeling the weight of all the things she couldn't tell Sarah, all the ways her life had diverged from anything her friend would understand. Sarah lived in the normal world, where threats came in the form of bad dates and difficult bosses, not burner phones and business rivals who weaponized vulnerabilities. Adrian appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Define okay." He came to stand beside her, both of them looking at the garden like it held answers. "I'm sorry. I never wanted you to be in danger because of me." "I know. If I'd known it would get this complicated." "You would have what? Not hired me? Not let me into your world? Not given me the opportunity that changed my life?" She looked at him. "I'm scared, Adrian. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But I'm not sorry. Not about any of it. You should be. This is exactly what everyone warned you about. Julian, Diana, probably your own instincts. And you ignored all of it. Because the alternative was going back to being invisible. And I can't do that anymore. I can't unknow what it feels like to matter. You mattered before you met me. Maybe. But I didn't know it. You made me know it." She turned to face him fully. "So yeah, this is scary and complicated and probably going to get worse. But I'm choosing to be here anyway. I'm choosing you, choosing this, choosing to believe that what we're building is worth the cost." He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted. Then he closed the distance between them and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper, like he was trying to communicate everything he couldn't say out loud. When they broke apart, Lena's heart was racing for entirely different reasons than fear. "That's new?" "That's been building for a while. We both know it." His hand came up to cup her face. "But Lena, if we do this, if we make this something more than just professional, the danger increases. You understand that, right?" "I understand. I'm doing it anyway." "You're sure?" She kissed him again, answering without words, and felt something click into place that had been building since that first dinner at Maria. This was what had been happening all along. Not just a job opportunity, not just a professional partnership, but something deeper and more complicated and infinitely more dangerous. They went back inside together, and the conversation in the dining room stopped when everyone saw their faces, saw how close they were standing, saw the way Adrian's hand rested protectively on her lower back. Diana smiled slightly. "Well, that changes things." "How?" Lena asked. "Because now you're not just a weakness Adrian has," James said. "You're someone he'll go to war for, and anyone smart enough to pay attention will know that, which makes you both more valuable as leverage and more dangerous to actually harm." "Great," Lena said. "So I went from target to nuclear option. That's reassuring." "It should be," Adrian said, "because it means anyone who comes after you knows exactly what they're inviting. And most people aren't stupid enough to pick that fight. And the ones who are stupid enough? We'll deal with them." His voice was steel underneath the calm. "Together." The meeting wrapped up shortly after, security protocols established, everyone assigned their roles in keeping Lena safe. She should have felt trapped, suffocated by all the protection and precautions. Instead, she felt oddly grounded, like she'd finally stopped fighting against the current and learned to swim with it instead. That night, she stayed in Adrian's guest room, but they both knew it was just for appearances, for maintaining some boundary that neither of them actually wanted. Around 2 a.m., unable to sleep, she found him in his study, working on something on his laptop. "Can't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. "Too much to process." He closed the laptop. "Come here." She crossed the room, let him pull her into his lap, and they sat like that for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime energy, millions of people living their normal lives, unaware that in this brownstone in the West Village, two people were navigating something that felt like the opposite of normal. "This is going to get worse before it gets better," Adrian said finally. "The threats, the danger, all of it. And I need you to know that if you change your mind about the job, about us, about any of this, I'll understand. Stop giving me exit ramps. I'm not taking them. Stubborn. You like it. I do." He kissed her temple. "But I'm also terrified I'm going to get you hurt." "Then don't. Keep me safe. Figure out who's behind the threats, and let's build something remarkable together." Wasn't that the plan? That was the plan before I complicated it by falling for you. The words hung in the air, huge and terrifying and perfect. Lena shifted to look at him directly. "Say that again." "I'm falling for you. Probably have been since that first dinner when you called me presumptuous." He smiled slightly. "Definitely have been since you showed up at that first gallery event, even though you were terrified. You're brave and talented and honest in ways that scare me. And I don't want to be the reason something bad happens to you." "You won't be. Whoever sent that threat, they're the reason, not you." She kissed him, slow and deliberate. "And for the record, I'm falling for you too. Which is probably stupid given the circumstances, but I'm doing it anyway." "Definitely stupid. Most of my best decisions are." They went to bed together that night, really together, and Lena fell asleep feeling safer than she had in months, despite knowing intellectually that she was in more danger than ever. Because Adrian's arms felt like home, and his promise to protect her felt real, and maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. The morning brought coffee and strategy sessions, and the uncomfortable realization that Lena's entire life now required coordination with a security team. She couldn't go to her apartment without an escort, couldn't work on the Connecticut property without checking in every hour, couldn't do anything spontaneous or unplanned without clearing it through Adrian's head of security first. "This is suffocating," she told Diana 3 days into the new arrangement. They were at the brownstone, Lena editing footage while Diana handled conference calls for the wellness event. "I feel like I'm under house arrest." "You're under protection. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel different." Diana closed her laptop, gave Lena her full attention. "I know it's hard, but Adrian's security team found something yesterday. The burner phone that sent you that threat? It was purchased with a credit card linked to one of Preston Carmichael's shell companies. We have proof now that he's behind this." Lena's hand stilled on the keyboard. "So what happens now?" "Adrian's handling it. He's meeting with Preston this afternoon, making it clear that coming after you was a mistake." Diana's expression was carefully neutral. "It should be resolved soon." "Should be?" Preston's unpredictable. But he's also a businessman. Once he understands the cost of continuing this, he'll back off. Lena wanted to believe that, wanted to think this nightmare would end with a conversation and some kind of professional understanding. But she'd been in Adrian's world long enough now to know that nothing was ever that simple. Adrian left for the meeting around 2 p.m., kissed Lena goodbye like he was heading to a normal business appointment instead of a confrontation with someone who'd threatened her. "Stay here. James is on his way over to keep you company." "I don't need a babysitter." "Humor me anyway." He touched her face, gentle. "I'll be back in a few hours. And Lena? After today, this should be over. Preston will back off, you can go back to your normal life, and we can stop living like we're in some kind of action movie." She wanted to believe him, watched him leave and tried to focus on editing, but her concentration was shot. James arrived an hour later with Thai food and a determined expression that suggested he'd been assigned distraction duty. "Adrian asked me to keep you occupied," he said, unpacking containers. "So let's talk about anything except what he's doing right now." "That's literally the only thing I want to talk about." "Then we'll talk about your work instead. Show me what you've been editing." She pulled up the latest cut of the Retreat Center documentary, and James watched in silence, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement. When it finished, he sat back and let out a low whistle. "That's exceptional, Lena. Really exceptional. You've captured something about the transformation that I didn't even know was there to capture." "Thanks." Adrian keeps saying the same thing, but I figured he's biased. He is biased. He's also right. James paused. "You know what this is, right? What you're building with this project?" A documentation of a real estate development? A portfolio that's going to make you one of the most sought-after documentary photographers in the city. Maybe the country. He gestured to the screen. This kind of work, telling the human story behind the business story, companies will pay ridiculous money for this. You're not just Adrian's photographer anymore. You're becoming your own brand. The idea felt too big, too impossible. But looking at the footage with fresh eyes, seeing it through James's reaction, Lena could almost believe it might be true. Her phone rang around 5. Unknown number, Manhattan area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Lena Carter? A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. This is Dr. Reese from Mount Sinai Hospital. Adrian Vale was brought in about 20 minutes ago. He listed you as his emergency contact. The world tilted. What happened? There was an incident. He's stable now, but he's asking for you. Can you come to the ER? Lena was moving before she consciously decided to, grabbing her bag, her jacket. James was already on his phone, coordinating with the security team, but she barely heard him. Adrian was in the hospital. Adrian was hurt. Nothing else mattered. The drive to Mount Sinai took 17 minutes that felt like 17 hours. James came with her, quiet and tense, making calls that Lena couldn't focus on. When they arrived, Diana was already there, pacing the waiting room with her phone pressed to her ear. "He's okay," Diana said immediately, seeing Lena's face. "He's okay. They're just checking him over. It looks worse than it is." What happened? The meeting with Preston went badly. There was a fight. Security had to separate them. Adrian took a few hits before his guys got him out. Diana's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Preston brought muscle to a business meeting. Adrian didn't expect that level of escalation. A nurse appeared, looked at Lena. "Miss Carter, Mr. Vale is asking for you. Room 7, just down the hall." Lena followed the nurse on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Room 7 was halfway down a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and fear, and when she pushed open the door, Adrian was sitting on an examination table with an ice pack pressed to his jaw and a cut above his eyebrow that someone had already started cleaning. "Hey," he said, trying to smile and wincing. "Told you I'd be back in a few hours." "This isn't funny." She crossed to him, hands hovering over his injuries like she was afraid to touch him. "What the hell happened?" "Preston brought friends to our meeting. Friends with fists. We had a disagreement about appropriate negotiation tactics." He caught one of her hands, pulled her closer. "I'm fine, Lena. Bruised ego more than anything else. You're in the emergency room. Precautionary. They wanted to make sure I didn't have a concussion." He touched her face with his free hand. "I'm sorry. I thought I could handle Preston with words. I was wrong." The doctor came in then, a woman in her 40s who looked thoroughly unimpressed with the situation. "Mr. Vale, you're lucky you have a thick skull. No concussion, no broken bones. You'll be sore for a few days, but you'll live." She looked at Lena. "Keep an eye on him tonight. If he shows any signs of dizziness, confusion, or unusual behavior, bring him back immediately." "I will." They discharged Adrian an hour later, and the drive back to the brownstone was tense and silent. Lena held his hand the entire way, needing the physical proof that he was okay, that this hadn't ended worse than it had. James and Diana were waiting at the brownstone with Marcus Chen and 2 other people from Adrian's inner circle. They'd converted the dining room back into a command center, and from the expressions on their faces, they were planning something. "We need to respond," Marcus was saying as Adrian and Lena walked in. "Preston crossed a line. We can't let that stand." "Agreed," James said. "But we respond smart, not emotional." Adrian held up a hand, silencing the room. "No response yet. Let me think." "Adrian, he had you jumped in a parking garage," Marcus said. "That's not business anymore. That's personal. We have to—" "I said let me think." Adrian's voice had an edge Lena had never heard before. "Everyone go home. We'll regroup tomorrow." The room cleared reluctantly, people shooting worried glances at Adrian as they left. Diana hugged Lena on her way out, whispered, "Take care of him. He's more shaken than he's showing." When they were alone, Lena guided Adrian to the couch, made him sit down, brought him water and more ice. He let her fuss for a few minutes before catching her wrist gently. "I'm okay." "Really?" "You got beat up because of me. Because Preston is using me to get to you. Her voice cracked. This is my fault. No, this is Preston being a psychopath who can't handle losing a business deal. He pulled her down to sit beside him. None of this is your fault, Lena. Don't take that on. How can I not? If I wasn't in your life, if you weren't in my life, I'd be less happy, and Preston would have found some other way to be vindictive. He's the problem, not you. Never you. Adrian kissed her forehead, careful of his injuries. I knew the risks when I brought you into my world. I knew it would complicate things. I did it anyway because you were worth the complication. Past tense? Present tense, you are worth it. Even with all this. He gestured vaguely at his bruised face. Especially with all this, because it made me realize how much you actually matter to me. Lena curled into his side, careful not to press on any injuries, and tried to stop the tears that were threatening. She'd been scared before, when Julian approached her, when the threatening text arrived. But this was different. This was seeing tangible evidence that Adrian's world could hurt him, could hurt her, could destroy what they were building together. What do we do now? She asked. We think, we plan, and we end this so decisively that Preston never considers coming after anyone I care about ever again. The next morning, Adrian called a meeting at the Connecticut property. Everyone came. Diana, James, Marcus, Keiko, even some people Lena had never met, members of Adrian's network who'd been pulled in to help. They gathered in the restored library, and Adrian stood at the front of the room with his bruised face and steady voice and laid out his plan. Preston wants the Riverside acquisition, the commercial property that started this whole thing. He thinks I'm going to withdraw my bid because he roughed me up. Adrian's smile was cold. He's wrong. I'm increasing my offer, by enough that there's no way he can match it without bankrupting himself. That's throwing money away, Marcus said. The property isn't worth that much. It's not about the property. It's about sending a message. Preston thought he could intimidate me. Instead, I'm going to financially destroy him. Adrian looked around the room. I need everyone's help with this. I need information on his assets, his cash flow, his weak points. I need to know exactly how much I need to bid to put him in an impossible position. James pulled out his laptop. I can get most of that by end of day. Do it. And Marcus, I need you to reach out to Preston's investors, quietly. Let them know what happened yesterday, that he's becoming unstable, that their money might not be safe with him. That'll crater his credibility. That's the point. Adrian's expression was harder than Lena had ever seen it. He made this personal. I'm making it professional suicide. The meeting continued for another hour, people dividing up tasks, coordinating strategy. Lena sat to the side, watching Adrian operate, seeing the full force of his intelligence and ruthlessness directed at someone who'd threatened what he cared about. It should have been scary. Instead, it felt like watching someone fight for her, protect her, prove that his promise to keep her safe wasn't empty words. After everyone left except Diana, Adrian found Lena in her studio, staring at footage she wasn't really seeing. You've been quiet, he said. I'm processing. Processing what? The fact that you're about to destroy someone's entire financial life because he hit you. She turned to face him. Adrian, that's a lot. He didn't just hit me. He threatened you, scared you, made you feel unsafe. That's unforgivable. He crossed to her, took her hands. I know this side of me isn't pretty. I know it's ruthless and probably crosses lines that make you uncomfortable. But Lena, I can't be half committed to protecting you. Either I do it completely or not at all. And I choose completely. I'm not asking you to destroy him for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for us. For the future we're trying to build where people know that coming after someone I love means consequences they can't afford. Someone I love. He'd said it casually, like it was a fact instead of a revelation. Lena's breath caught. You love me? Adrian smiled, soft despite the bruises. Of course I love you, have for weeks probably. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. He touched her face. Does that scare you? Terrifies me. But I love you too, so I guess we're both terrified together. He kissed her, gentle and careful, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. They were in this, really in this, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. The next week moved fast. Adrian's increased bid on the Riverside property hit the market, and the response was immediate. Preston tried to counter, but his investors were already spooked by the rumors Marcus had carefully spread. Two of them pulled their funding publicly, citing concerns about Preston's decision-making and stability. Without their backing, Preston couldn't match Adrian's offer. The property went to Adrian 4 days later. But that wasn't the end. James had found something in his research, evidence that Preston had been running a side operation, using investor money for personal expenses in ways that were definitely illegal. They turned the evidence over to the SEC, anonymous tip that couldn't be traced back to Adrian's team. The investigation was announced 2 weeks after the Riverside deal closed. Lena watched it all unfold from the safety of Adrian's world, protected and secure and trying to process the fact that she'd become someone important enough that powerful men would go to war over. It didn't feel real. But the evidence was everywhere, in the way Adrian's associates treated her with new respect, in the way Diana had started including her in strategic discussions, in the way even James now asked her opinion on things that had nothing to do with photography. She'd become someone who mattered, not just to Adrian, but in this world he'd pulled her into. And she still wasn't sure what to do with that. The threatening messages stopped after Preston's legal troubles became public. Adrian's security team gradually relaxed their protocols, letting Lena move more freely, trusting that the immediate danger had passed. She went back to her apartment for the first time in 3 weeks and found it felt foreign, like she'd outgrown the space and the life it represented. "You could move in with me," Adrian said when she mentioned it. They were at the brownstone, Lena packing up some of her equipment to take back to Brooklyn. "You're here more than you're there anyway. We've been together for 3 weeks, that's fast. We've been building toward this for 3 months. The dating part is just catching up to where we already were." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "But if you want to keep your place, keep it. I'm not trying to rush you. You just financially destroyed your enemy and got him indicted. I think you're allowed to rush a little. That was business. This is us. Different rules." She set down the camera she'd been packing, looked at him directly. "Are there rules for us? Because I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't know how to date someone who operates at the level you do, who has enemies and strategies and the kind of power that can remake someone's life with a phone call." "You're doing fine. Better than fine." He crossed to her, pulled her close. "Lena, I don't need you to know how to navigate my world perfectly. I just need you to be honest with me and stay yourself. The rest we'll figure out together. What if I can't keep being myself in this world? What if it changes me into someone I don't recognize? Then we'll deal with that too. But I don't think that's going to happen. You've been in the deep end for months now, and you're still the same person who sent me that photo by accident, brave and honest and real. That doesn't just disappear." She moved in 2 weeks later, not because he pushed, but because staying in her apartment started to feel like clinging to a version of herself that didn't exist anymore. Jessica helped her pack, looking around at the equipment and nice clothes and evidence of Lena's transformed life with something like awe. "This is really happening," Jessica said. "You're really doing this." "I'm really doing this." "You're happy?" Lena thought about it. 3 months ago, she'd been broken down on a bathroom floor, convinced she'd never matter to anyone. Now she was moving into a brownstone in the West Village with a man she loved who'd literally gone to war to protect her. She had a career she believed in, work that mattered, a future that looked nothing like what she'd planned but felt more right than anything she'd imagined. "Yeah," she said, "I'm really happy." The retreat center opened in late June, exactly on schedule despite everything that had happened. The launch event was bigger than Adrian had originally planned, 150 people instead of 30, media coverage, actual celebrities Lena had to work not to stare at. She documented it all, camera in hand, capturing the culmination of months of work and transformation. Adrian gave a speech about creating space for meaningful work, about the importance of stepping away from the noise to find clarity. Lena shot footage of him speaking, confident and compelling, and felt proud in a way that had nothing to do with her own accomplishments. He'd built something remarkable, and she'd been part of it. That mattered. After the formal presentations, after the tours and the networking and the endless photographs, Adrian found her in her studio. She was uploading the day's footage, making sure everything was backed up properly. "How'd I do?" he asked. "You were perfect. Very inspiring." "I was nervous. Couldn't tell." "Not at all." She saved the final file, turned to face him. This is really something, Adrian. What you built here. It's going to help a lot of people. What we built, he corrected. Your documentation is half of what makes this work. People don't just see a nice building. They see the story of transformation. That's all you. We make a good team. We do. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Lena's heart stuttered. Before you panic, it's not a ring. We've only been officially together for 2 months. I'm not that presumptuous. You're exactly that presumptuous. He smiled, opened the box. Inside was a key. It's to this studio, your space, officially. Legally documented, deed has your name on it. Whether you stay with me or not, whether this retreat center succeeds or fails, this space is yours. Your place to work, create, build whatever you want to build. Lena took the key, feeling the weight of it. Adrian was giving her ownership of something real, something permanent. Not just access to his world, but actual stake in it. This is too much, she said, but she was already closing her hand around the key. It's exactly right. You've earned it. And more than that, you deserve a place that's completely yours, where you're not dependent on me or anyone else for your ability to work. He touched her face. I love you, Lena. And part of loving you means making sure you have your own foundation, not just borrowing mine. She kissed him, the key pressed between their palms, and felt something click into place. This was what partnership looked like, not just romance and protection, but building something sustainable together, making sure they both had what they needed to stand on their own, even while choosing to stand together. The summer passed in a blur of work and settling into their shared life. Lena took on more clients, built her portfolio, started getting approaches from companies and publications that wanted her documentary style. Adrian launched 3 more projects, each one more ambitious than the last, and Lena documented them all. Preston Carmichael pleaded guilty to fraud charges in August, accepted a deal that would keep him out of prison but destroy his reputation and career. Julian Cross disappeared from Manhattan's social scene, rumors suggesting he'd moved to Los Angeles to start over somewhere Adrian's shadow didn't reach. And Lena kept working, kept creating, kept becoming someone she was proud to be. Sarah visited in September, finally making the trip into the city after months of Lena being too busy to go to Brooklyn. She looked around the brownstone with wide eyes, met Adrian briefly before he excused himself to give them privacy, and then turned to Lena with an expression that was half impressed, half concerned. So this is the life now, Sarah said. This is the life. You're sure you're okay? Like really okay? Because this is a lot, Lena. A lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of everything. I'm good. Better than good. Lena poured them wine, led Sarah to the back garden. I know it looks crazy from the outside, but Sarah, I'm doing work I care about. I'm with someone who treats me like I matter, and I actually believe in my own value now. That's worth the complications. The complications being that his enemies tried to threaten you and he destroyed them in response? When you put it like that, it sounds dramatic. It is dramatic. Your life is literally a thriller novel. Sarah took a drink of wine. But you do seem happy. Different, definitely. More confident, less apologetic about existing. Adrian doesn't let me apologize for existing. He gets annoyed when I try. I like him for that. Sarah paused. I'm happy for you. Terrified, but happy. Just don't lose yourself in his world, okay? Stay Lena. Stay the person who takes photos because she sees things differently, not just because it pays well. I will. I promise. After Sarah left, Lena sat in the garden alone for a while, thinking about that promise. She'd changed so much in the last 6 months, from invisible waitress to successful photographer, from someone who couldn't pay rent to someone who owned a studio space in Connecticut, from Marcus's discarded girlfriend to Adrian Vale's partner. But underneath all the external changes, was she still fundamentally herself? Still the person who'd sent that accidental photo because she needed to feel real and visible. Adrian found her there as the sun was setting, sat beside her without speaking. They watched the light fade together, and Lena leaned into him, feeling grounded and present and sure. Sarah thinks I've changed too much, she said. Have you? I don't know. I feel different. But maybe that's just me becoming who I was supposed to be all along. I think that's exactly what it is. He kissed her temple. You haven't lost yourself, Lena. You've just finally found yourself. There's a difference. That night, lying in bed with Adrian asleep beside her, Lena pulled up that original photo on her phone, the one she'd sent by accident that had started everything. She looked at the woman in that image, red-eyed and defiant and desperate to matter, and barely recognized her. But she recognized the hunger, the need to be seen, the refusal to be invisible even when invisibility would have been easier. That part hadn't changed, had just found better outlets, healthier expressions. She was still fighting to matter, still insisting on her own value, just doing it from a position of strength now instead of desperation. She deleted the photo, didn't need it anymore, didn't need the reminder of who she'd been when she knew so clearly who she'd become. 6 months later, Lena's first major gallery show opened in Chelsea. It was a retrospective of her documentation work, the retreat center transformation, yes, but also projects she'd taken on independently, stories she'd told in her own voice without Adrian's influence. The opening was packed, Adrian at her side, his inner circle showing up in force to support her. "You did this," Diana said, looking around at the walls covered in Lena's work. "Built a career, made a name for yourself. I'm proud of you. Thank you. For everything. For warning me, for helping me, for seeing who you could become. That was all you, honey. We just didn't get in your way." The reviews came out the next morning, and they were better than Lena had dared hope. Critics praised her eye, her ability to find human stories in business narratives, her unflinching documentation of transformation. One review called her the most exciting documentary photographer to emerge from New York in the last decade. Lena read that line 3 times, trying to make it feel real. "Believe it yet?" Adrian asked, reading over her shoulder. "Getting there." "Good. Because I have something to show you." He pulled up an email on his phone. Architectural Digest wants to do a feature on the retreat center, and they specifically requested that you shoot it and write the accompanying essay. "Are you serious?" "Completely. They saw your gallery show, loved your work, want to give you editorial control over how the project is presented." He smiled. "You're not just my photographer anymore, Lena. You're your own person, your own brand, exactly like I always knew you could be." She took the assignment. Spent 3 weeks shooting new footage and writing an essay about transformation and second chances and what it means to build something meaningful out of an accidental beginning. The feature ran in the December issue, her name in the byline, her vision on full display. Marcus sent her a text when it published. "You made it. Proud of you." Jessica called, crying, "You're in Architectural Digest. My roommate is in Architectural Digest." Sarah sent flowers with a note. "Never doubted you for a second." Okay, maybe a few seconds, but not many. And Adrian just held her, kissed her, and whispered, "I told you that you mattered. Told you that you were worth believing in. You did. I just needed time to believe it myself. And now? Now I know. I matter. I'm good at what I do. I built something real." She pulled back to look at him. "We built something real." "We did, and we're going to keep building it." That night, they went back to Maria, the restaurant where they'd had their first dinner, where Adrian had offered her a job and she'd been too terrified to understand what she was agreeing to. They sat at the same table, ordered the same wine, and Lena marveled at how different everything felt from that first night. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said over dessert. "Always. That night, when I sent you that photo, did you know? Did you have any idea it would turn into this?" Adrian thought about it, really thought about it. "No. I didn't know it would be this specifically, but I knew you were someone worth paying attention to, someone real in a world full of performance, and I knew I wanted to understand what made you send something that vulnerable to someone you thought was your friend." He reached across the table, took her hand. "I didn't plan to fall in love with you, but I'm not surprised that I did. I'm surprised. Every day I'm surprised that this is my life." "Good. Stay surprised. Stay grateful. But Lena, also let yourself believe you deserve it, because you do." The waiter brought the check, and Adrian paid it without looking at the total, same as he had that first night. But this time, when they left the restaurant, Lena didn't feel like someone who'd stumbled into a world she didn't belong in. She felt like someone who'd fought for her place and won. They walked back to the brownstone hand in hand, the November air cold but not unbearable. New York glittered around them, millions of lights and millions of stories, and Lena's was just one of them. But it was hers. She'd claimed it, built it, made it real. "I was thinking," Adrian said as they climbed the steps to the front door. The retreat center's doing well enough that I'm considering opening a second location. Somewhere west, maybe California or Colorado. That's amazing. And I was thinking you might want to document that transformation too, if you're interested, if it doesn't interfere with your other work. Adrian Vale, are you offering me another job? I'm offering you a partnership. Again, seems to have worked out pretty well the first time. She kissed him on the doorstep, in full view of anyone passing by, not caring who saw or what they thought. This was her life, complicated and dangerous and more than she'd ever imagined she could have. Built on an accidental photo and a man brave enough to see past the mistake to the person behind it. Yes, she said. Let's build something else remarkable together. Inside, the brownstone was warm and welcoming, filled with evidence of the life they'd created. Lena's photographs on the walls, Adrian's books everywhere, their shared space that felt like home in ways Lena's old apartment never had. She thought about that bathroom floor in Brooklyn, the night everything changed. Thought about the woman who'd sent a desperate photo to the wrong person and accidentally changed her entire life. That woman had been convinced she didn't matter, that she'd never be anything more than background noise in someone else's story. That woman had been wrong. Lena mattered, had always mattered. She just needed someone to help her see it, and once she saw it, once she believed it, everything else had followed. Thank you, she told Adrian as they got ready for bed. For that first dinner, for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself, for giving me a chance when you had no reason to. I had every reason to. You were talented and honest and exactly what I didn't know I needed. He pulled her close. And Lena, you don't have to keep thanking me for seeing what was obvious. You built this life. I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through it. She had walked through it, had chosen over and over again to stay when she could have left, to build when she could have run, to believe when doubt would have been easier. And she'd keep choosing it, keep building, keep creating, keep proving that accidents could become destinies if you were brave enough to follow them where they led. Outside, New York hummed with midnight energy, millions of people living their lives, making their choices, building their own stories. And in a brownstone in the West Village, Lena Carter fell asleep in the arms of someone who loved her, surrounded by proof that she mattered, confident that tomorrow would bring more opportunities to create something meaningful. The accidental photo was long deleted, but what it had started, the career, the love, the absolute certainty that she deserved to take up space in the world, that was permanent. That was real. That was hers. And that was exactly enough.